working for VSO under Challenge Youth Fund program.
Good morning, my name is Alice Kimani, working for GIZ as a gig economy advisor.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Ndungu from Biashara Africa and also a member of ASEC. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Masi Kimalant. I'm the CEO for ASEC. ASEC stands for the Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya. Happy to be here.
All right, fantastic. You see, it's a very decent mix of private, public, and private sector, public sector, and everybody else in the middle. So I'm really excited to have you guys today. Over to you, Sylvie. Yeah. Oh wait, before you come on. Yeah, sorry, this is the last time I'm doing it. Last time I'm doing this, right? So feel free to take as many photos. Actually, we should do this as a challenge right now. So with the person right next to you, we're gonna go on Twitter right now. So the person who's like right next to you, you're gonna take a selfie.
Accelerate and provide support to entrepreneurs at every stage of their journey. So we work with both idea stage, early stage, and growth stage companies, and we have many products and services that we've developed in-house for training and for acceleration, access to capital, and then we run an annual business competition every year here in Kenya. So if you've heard the name Synapis, now you can kind of link the two together, that Synapis also manages the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund, but we provide a lot of other support for entrepreneurs, and we'd be very happy to connect with any of you who are interested in tapping into some of those services that we provide. So the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund is a project that has been around now for 3 years. It's turning into, I guess, what's now about a 6-year program funded by UK Aid, and they'll be with us shortly, so we'll introduce them soon. But we have a wonderful partnership with UK Aid. Their goal with this project is to catalyze innovations that are creating jobs in the manufacturing, informal, and agriculture sectors in Kenya. So what the fund has done since 2018, every year, if you've maybe seen these on TV in the last few years, every year we've run a big business competition where we've had more than 500 entrepreneurs in Kenya apply to be part of this super competitive selection process that has resulted in 10 semi-finalists pitching 5 winners each year. So over the years, we've had 3 of these competitions, 15 winners, and then we've had 1 other special fund for companies that are making particularly valuable contributions to. We've had other roundtables. I know some of you have been at previous roundtables and hope you'll join us for future roundtables. But we run these every few months, and the goal is to bring together several companies from our portfolio that are in a similar industry or have similar innovations that they're working on. And what we're trying to do, beyond just funding these companies, because we all need obviously more than money and technical support, is to also create a space where we can all talk about this innovation and what it means for the entire industry. So I'm been happy to meet several of you this morning who are also running similar companies that might be in one of the industries that we're representing. And what we're trying to do is catalyze the lessons that we're learning from this fund and the very, very exciting and innovating companies that we support, to see what spillover effects can we have in Kenya as a whole for other companies that are in these sectors. So our role as fund managers, not just to fund and support our companies, but really to support kind of the creation of more innovation, more spillover effects for impact in Kenya. So we hope that here you can make some valuable connections, get some valuable insights, be able to follow up with someone afterwards who is doing something that you would like to do or like to tap into. And we hope that you'll continue to follow us as we go on, because we would just love to be able to bring people together, make more connections, and continue to catalyze innovation in Kenya. So I think that's all I'm going to say. So now I'm going to turn it over to, we have 3 of our companies in the gig economy that are going to be presenting their innovations to you. Then we're going to have a little tea break, then a panel afterwards. I think, Charles, I'm handing it over to you now. Yes? Or Amani, who I can't find. Charles, why don't you come up and tell us just quickly about the 3 companies that are presenting and what they're going to talk about, and then we're going to move into that.
Thank you, Sylvie. Hi guys. Thank you for coming. This is the 3rd of our learning roundtables. The first one was on the agriculture, and the innovations are supported by KCJF and how they are disrupting the agri space, especially agri-processing in agri value chains. The second one was on the digital tools and digitization, and how digitization is also disrupting value chains and helping to create jobs. And this third one is on the gig economy. The way that we have structured the roundtables is they are revolving around the sectors within which KCJF supports. So we support largely five main areas. We're in the agriculture and agri-processing. We're in digitization. We are in the gig economy, which is the informal sector. We are also in manufacturing, which is going to be our next learning roundtable around manufacturing. And then lastly, we are in the marginalized geographies. So we're supporting companies that work in places like Turkana, Isiolo, Samburu, and all that. That'll also be one of the learning roundtables that we're going to be having. So the learning roundtables are built around the sectors that we support. We structured them in terms of internal learning roundtables and external learning roundtables. We started with the internal, where the firms that are supported are sharing among us. And then we are now moving to the next stage, where we start to have external facing conversations, so as to then begin to see how can we plug better into ecosystems, how can we draw from ecosystem support, but most critically is what does the path to scale look like? And part of this conversation is built on an understanding that companies can't scale on their own. For companies to scale their solutions, they need to work with industry, they need to work with an ecosystem, they need to ride on favorable policies and regulatory framework. And I'm glad that ASEC is here. There's a lot of work that ASEC has done with the Innovation Hub and the UK Tech Hub in as far as documenting the regulatory framework for SMEs and developing a toolkit that SMEs can now use to understand and navigate the regulatory framework, and that's very important. Today we want to have these companies that we've been working with share with you the work that they have been doing in and around not just re-engineering how gig economy can work, but also with the understanding that while SMEs form 80% of the workforce, gig economy forms the next frontier, all right? So we are moving away from the white collar jobs. I used to be in a white collar jobs. I used to work at Deloitte, and a time like this I would be in a shirt and a tie, and now was a formal dress code. If I didn't go to work Monday to Thursday on a tie and a suit, I would get summoned by HR, and they would ask me if there was something they needed to know. And then I would go to my car and find a tie, all right? But guess what? On Fridays, if you wanted to dress down on Fridays, you needed to go to HR and pay 500 shillings. And they would use that to support CSR, company CSR. So if you were on a dress down on a Friday, and they haven't seen your record for 500, HR would ask you if you want to have a conversation. Yep. Are you saying you're on a tie on a Friday because you can't afford 500 shillings? You know, should they advance you something so that you can then pay and relax? But that's white collar. But the economy is largely moving from white collar to gig, and a gig is find your space, find something you can do, be creative, sell your solution. And we're seeing a lot, if Zumi was here, you would have seen how we have a lot of creatives that are coming onto spaces. Creatives are linking up to SMEs with products. Creatives are taking those products and creating new content around those products and helping sell those products. But they're doing those from their houses, from using their phones and simple equipment that they have. And they are doing them for a lot number of SMEs, and each one of them is making money. On the Tivo platform, every influencer or promoter of a product makes about between 5 to 12% on the value of the product. That's a good amount of money. Your motivation is the more you sell, the more you make money. You know? And so if you can choose to wake up and wake up at 5 in the morning, or you can choose to wake up at 10, but you know, bottom line is the effort you put, and it's your own. You know, you don't have to worry about sitting on traffic and doing all these things, and somebody telling you you're not here by 8, what's going on, and HR writing to you and telling you, look, you didn't come to work yesterday, show cause, and this kind of thing. That's where the world is going, and these companies that are going to be presenting today are going to show us how they are contributing to that space. They're contributing to that space. We have 3 companies today. We have BuildHer. BuildHer is a unique company that, and Tato will speak more about BuildHer, but BuildHer is a daring company. Daring in a sense that they have looked and seen that women make only 3% of workers in the construction industry. Okay? And they don't like it like that. And I said, we can do something. We can do something. We can change this trend. We can bring in more women, more skilled, qualified women into the construction industry as competent workers and artisans. Okay? And they can make money just like everybody else. Right? I'm not sure how many of you do spend time passing by construction centers or that kind of thing, and how many women you spot. But when you spot some women, I've passed by sometimes, and what the women I saw wasn't very impressive, because they were either selling stuff on the side or supplying food stuff, you know, but they were not on the helmets doing the job. And BuildHer is changing that. They are skilling the women. They're collaborating with the construction industry. They're placing the women there, and they have a powerful story of women like Stephanie Siopmoa, like Brenda Rachar, who are unemployed women in informal settlements, single mothers, that they moved them from there, recruited them, trained them, placed them, and they're now earning north of 30,000 shillings. They have moved from the slums, from Huruma and Mathare, and they now live decent lives, all within a short period of time. Significant change. And then we have We Center, and We Center is in the recycling of electronic waste. Okay? They are the only company in Kenya that are doing the recycling of electronic waste. Okay? And they are sitting on a huge potential. In that huge potential, sometimes people never wonder, you know, all the electronics in your houses or in your spaces, you know, basic things like broken down phones, broken down TVs or radio or electronic cables. Where do they go? Most of us put them in a dustbin, and then you'll just find their way wherever they find their way. They're not working anymore. But We Center isn't doing that. So We Center is changing how we see unused or unusable or broken down electronics. And they're saying, look, there's value in that. One, this primary value that if you supply it to us, we pay you 20 shillings per kilo. So you can already make money. So if you have a TV that's broken, you take it to them, they weigh it, and Boniface will tell us where are the weighing centers, and you weigh it and you get your 20 shillings per kilo and you go away. And they will turn it around. Okay? Some of them they recycle, some of them they repurpose, and then they bring them back into the market. But in that entire chain, they are creating jobs for young people. They are creating jobs as collectors. They're creating jobs for people who manage their centers. They're creating the job for people who turn around those electronic waste. We visited the center, and we saw how they even recycle batteries, used batteries. They have a whole center, and bring in old battery and take away new batteries. You know, same process. Huge significant reduction in price, you know, and all that. So We Center is here, again, trying to create work opportunities for young people across the entire value chain of e-waste recycling. And then we have Taka. Now, Taka sits on the other side of where the We Center sits. So We Center sits on electronic, Taka sits on the solid waste. Okay? I would assume at some point for Taka, like your waste collectors, if they're in the process of getting the waste and they see something that is suitable for we, they'll say, this is for we. We collect it for we. I like that. I like that. So Taka Taka started with recycling of single-use plastics. And they would have people, they have set up, with our support, 4 main buyback centers in Thika, in Dandora, in Kitengela, in Mombasa, and another one is in Ngong that didn't do very well because the county government of Kajiado closed down the dumping center. So now they're in Kitengela. Out of those 4 buyback centers, they are collecting way above 6 tons of waste per day. Okay. Out in Banana, they have set up 2 recycling plants. One that recycles the single waste plastics and produces flakes, and another one that recycles almost 80% of all solid waste in a dumping site and produces pellets. Okay, and the flakes and the pellets go into making the plastic containers that you see in your households, non-food plastic containers that you see in your households, the water tanks, the basins, and all the pails and all kind of thing. Those are produced from the recycling material that Taka Taka and companies in our space are doing. So I will let also Nora speak to that. Now, in this particular session, I'm not sure quite what the order is. Who's starting the presentations? All right, so I guess you may need to share your presentation with them. So it's on the streaming because it's live streaming. But Tato, this is your opportunity to wow us once again, to share with us the amazing work that Builder is doing and how you're disrupting the construction industry, creating opportunities for work for hundreds of women in this country. Please come forward.
No pressure at all. Okay. So who am I signaling to for when I'm ready for next page? You. Okay, great. So you can go to the other one, the first one. Yes, so I think Charles has done an excellent job. I always feel like Charles should be our marketing director. Just come market build her. So as Charles shared, we are trying to do something interesting. We're trying to integrate women into construction and manufacturing. This is something that not many people are doing across the world. Before COVID, I made it a point to visit people who are doing it. I found somebody in New York. And I think I have one other person in Zambia who I haven't visited. And different companies which are working with artisans but not training women specifically. So this is a niche area of work, not just in Kenya, but globally. And for Africans, that's a good problem. Not everything is an African problem. So we are happy. Next slide. So our problem, as entrepreneurs know, you start with this big problem. So our big problem was, number one, the lack of construction artisans who are skilled, qualified, and able to execute work. Anybody who's tried to hire fundis knows this. So NCA, National Construction Authority, has published that 2 million artisans are needed to fulfill the market.
Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah.
A little bit on the direction side. So I prefer that you stand closer to that side. Sorry.
Oh,
Since we're
finish
live
first.
streaming this,
Yeah.
there's a lot of like video quality thing going on. So we just have to shift
Okay.
where our speakers are standing. Sorry for that interruption.
Okay.
Nick?
Is that okay? Okay. So where was I? NCA had published, thank you, it's okay, that 2 million construction artisans are needed to fill the skills gap in Kenya, not just Nairobi. 138,000 are the number of artisans they have registered. But of that 138,000, only 3% are women within the skilled trades. So if you see women on construction sites, they're usually collecting sand, carrying water, doing unskilled labor, which is usually paid 300 to 400 shillings per day. Whereas a skilled worker is paid 1,000, 1,500 to 2,000. So where do we want women? Of course, we want them in skilled trades. The other thing that we were interested in is that 80% plus of artisans within construction learn their skill on site. So no formal training. So when you hear people complaining that artisans do shoddy jobs, why do you think this is? How would you work if you didn't go to formal training? College, university. We need to prepare artisans. But once we got into the work of training women, we discovered other problems. We discovered, for instance, our end customer, one of our end customers, the primary one is employers who hire fundis, but the second is actually the women we train. We want them to be equipped for the work. We want them to be able to go out and do their jobs. And we discovered two key problems. One is that employers often don't know what they need. When you ask a contractor, what do you require this skilled fundi to do on site? They don't give you clear answers. This is a challenge when you're training for that customer who doesn't have a clear direction on what's needed. The second is women, when they go to site, there's an overwhelming culture of inappropriate practices. How to tackle that? The second thing we tackle is trying to understand employers' needs, the needs that they're telling us and the needs we observe on site. So for instance, we noticed that there's no clear transition in onboarding between when a fundi starts to work in the first, second month, what are the skills you're requiring them to have versus month 2, 3, 4, 5, and in a year, how are they supposed to transition to get into more leadership roles? So our model looks at those two problems. So we provide access to education for women from informal settlements. We do this through community groups and NGOs, because if you're going to work with women in Africa, there's a certain way Africans work. We trust our social networks. It's easier to recruit women that way. With these community groups, we're also able to understand the unspoken issues with labor. So when you find a fundi is not showing up, what problems are they facing in their community at home that are making them not focus on the job? We also provide accredited construction skills. Now this is tough because accreditation is hard to understand in Kenya, but we work with National Industrial Training Authority to understand the requirements of NITA. They work closely with NCA. So we just make sure that all our skills are accredited. The secret sauce of what we do is that we provide life skills training, we provide work readiness training, we also provide mental health coaching, nutrition, physical fitness conditioning for the women that we train. So basically we treat our women artisans as whole human beings, and we understand for them to succeed on the job, they have to succeed internally in their personal lives and professional lives. And then we also work on women and family support. Anybody who's worked with women, we talk about empowering women. Well, our context is very traditional. A lot of the times, what slows women down is parents, husbands and partners and lovers, children, and their communities. Women feel very responsible to their communities. So we go out into communities to help communities understand, by empowering a woman through skills development, she's able to do these things for herself and for the community, which is out for the ultimate good. And then two key things that we do, which face now the employer, is industry engagement. We go out into industry to collect data from employers. We try to ask nuanced questions. If they say what their needs are, we develop surveys to try and get to the root of why aren't you finding this type of fundis at the moment. So we do a lot of industry engagement, which means we have a team who's out on site just gathering data from employers, supervisors, and anybody within that chain. And then we also do advocacy. We realized soon into launching Build High in 2019 that we had to prepare the market to receive women. So what this looks like is we advocate for things like separate toilets for women on site. We also advocate for clear reporting structures to reduce cases of abuse and power dynamics. And we also offer to train employers on things that are affecting them and their outputs. So for instance, many employers complain that people are showing up high. Why? What's their mental condition? We can come do a training. They complain that fundis are asking for advances. We come in and we train on money management. So as you can see, to do this simple work, we've had to go into our ecosystem and understand what areas of support are needed. I don't know if we can continue to do this over time, but our approach requires that for now. Our impact to date is we have trained over 200 women. Of those 200 women, 166 are still working within construction. The others go into related fields or unrelated fields. We have some people who go into business for themselves, but we're very interested in this 166 that are still working as skilled fundis in the sector. We also see that each woman who joins our program has a 530% increase in income after 4 months. So women come in earning maybe $3, so that's 300 shillings per day. After 4 months, each woman earns a minimum of 700. Some even earn 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500, depending on skill level. But what we like to monitor is, what are you earning after a year? And after a year, most women are earning about 1,000 shillings. So this is really incredible for us. In addition, we're starting to see different things emerging. So why women became a key focus for us, not just in training, but how are they transitioning into their careers, is that we started to see that 53 women out of these 166 trained are not only self-sourced, they didn't go to work and find jobs through our partners, but they are women who are also pushing entrepreneurship. They're women going out, buying their own tools, buying machines, starting small workshops at home, in the community, looking for jobs as small subcontractors. We didn't expect this to happen in 3 years. So now we're supporting women understand how to start their own businesses. The other thing we're proud of is 97% of our employers are implementing policies to help transition women artisans to work safely, but also it's policies that are good for them. So for instance, equal pay for equal work. You would be shocked how many conversations we have with contractors about paying women the same amount of money. You pay that guy 700. Why do you want to pay her 500? You know, no, we don't know. And this is a conversation we have so often. Or the other thing is an employer tells you, if we onboard her, we test her in 3 months. If she's doing okay, we pay her 1,000. 3 months, you're like, oh, great, did you test her? No, she's not ready. But her direct supervisor is saying she's doing a really good job. No, she's not ready. So we have to fight for them to test her, and they're like, wow, she passed. We didn't expect it. What do you mean? And she's doing the job. So for us, it's about ensuring that we check up with our employers and making sure they are transitioning them within their systems. So 97% of our employers allow us to work with them to do this. There's a 95% increase in confidence. Anybody who's a manager or HR manager, or if you own a business, you know it's important for your workforce to be motivated. And the other thing is we calculate added benefit of value, income added benefit to each woman. And we have, what we've calculated is a $360,000 increase in income earned from women from the program. And for us, we want to keep collecting this data to see how much money are we putting into the hands of women, how much money are we putting into the hands of, into the economy through women transitioning to work. Oh, sorry, next slide. So what does growth or scale look like for us? So as I said, we are working, we're spread out because preparing the market requires us to do certain things. But for us to grow and to scale sustainably, we see that we have to do these 5 key things up here. So one is build market reputation as a training and innovation hub. This looks at helping employers understand what kind of labor is needed for what aspects of work, and that we're able to deliver it. The second one is to advance career growth development and behavior change. Most women in the program who come to us because the training is so hard are women who are really, they have a lot of grit, they have a lot of toughness, and they're ready to grow their careers and accelerate their careers. So it's helping them become business women, it's helping them set up subcontracting companies, it's helping them learn how to challenge a very informal industry and to help formalize it and to bring quality standards. We also need to build perceptions of women in construction. So this is our advocacy work. We don't only go out to employers, we also go into community. We have career days, career fairs in the community to inform women that this is a viable career path for them. And the fourth is to develop revenue generating programs. So right now we are set up as a grant funded organization, but we do want to transition into having sustainability, creating revenue for ourselves. So we've set up a furniture line that we hope to develop in the next few years. We also have contractors approaching us to take on subcontracting roles. So there's going to be multiple businesses that we're going to incubate within BuildHer and then maybe set up as separate social enterprises to feed profit back into the training program. And then the last is, of course, improve financial efficiency, and that is reducing cost per woman trained. We are streamlining how we order materials, where we source from, how often, partnerships to help us develop discounts. As we grow, we are going to have to do this because construction is a very expensive area to be in. And I just wanted to stop the next slide to show you at least one product from our line. And you can follow us on BuildHer products. We'll have a lot more visibility in advertising our products. But as you can see, it's some beautiful stuff made by women.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I definitely cannot top that. So we'll just keep it rolling. Taka Solutions.
Good morning again. Maybe to reiterate, my name is Nora Nyaga, Head of Partnership, Taka Solutions, and our CEO, Daniel Paffenhold, said hi. So Taka Solutions is a waste management company. We are based in Nairobi, doing most of our operations. And yeah, we can move to the next slide. So we have an integrated model of sorting. We have an integrated model of waste collection, sorting, composting, recycling. And recently we now introduced another third party of our business that is dealing with the informal waste pickers. So you can see on the table that is our waste management chain for Taka Solutions, where we have the waste collection. Now we are doing with the informal waste pickers. And then we have clients. We have then the sorting, where we do the buyback centers, the material recovery centers, recycling, composting, that is all done in-house. And then now we have the output and sales. Next slide. So for our scalability is Nairobi is producing 4,000 of tons in a day. And for us, Taka Solutions, we are only able to recycle, I would say, 1% of that waste. So the rest of the waste, that's where now the informal waste pickers comes in, because now we have established the buyback centers to make sure we are also trying to sensitize on more of waste collection and recycling. So only of, after the waste is produced 4,000 of tons in Nairobi on daily basis, you can see less than 5% is what is recycled. And I would say now for us, Taka Solutions, we're only able to handle 1%. When the 1% now we collect or that comes to our facility, we're able to recycle up to 95%. How do we do that? Because we have different sorting capacity. When we collect the waste from household, the process is once the waste is collected, comes to our sorting site, where we currently have 2 sorting sites. One is in Kikuyu, the other one is Banana, where most of my colleagues have visited. So when the waste comes there, it's sorted into different fractions, that is the organic and inorganic. The inorganic waste, that is the dry fractions, we have about 45 of dry fractions, where we sort into different types. And then for the organic, we have now the organic, whereby we produce the pig food that goes to the local farmers, because we are also dealing with the local communities and different communities. And then for the other organic, we are able to recycle in-house, where we do the organic fertilizer. Taka Solutions is one of the biggest, largest waste management company, producing high volumes of waste, and that's why we have the 3 recycling site, we have composting site, and we also have incinerator. We have also built rapport with commercial clients. You can see we are handling about 20 commercial customers in malls. Some of the malls, maybe you've seen our bins. We handle Capital Center. We have most of the hotels like Kempinski. We have the Hub. We have most of the malls we are handling. Why are we able to do that? Because we offer them in-house recycling or separation at source, where we put stuff to sort there into different fractions, try to sensitize them of not even sorting, but making people who comes to the mall know that waste is a resource. So that's why we do that. So we are currently doing 60 tons of waste, but recently I think that number needs to go up, because I think we are doing almost 80. The analysis we did like 2 weeks ago. So we intend to do more of that and also sensitize other key stakeholders in the market. So our traction and milestone, we have efficient sourcing of plastic from the buyback centers and material recovery centers. So what happens at the material recovery centers? We have the buyback centers where we deal with informal waste pickers. We've built a buyback center, and we sensitize the waste pickers. When I talk about the waste pickers, I know people use these like chokoras, but I don't want to use that word. We call them our youths, single women, and they're the most vulnerable people in the market. Like, They are the most people which are forgotten. Because even when you go somewhere and you see someone just pulling a bag of waste, you say, that one is chokora, maybe he's going to grab my bag or something like that. So we are trying to make sure we are dealing them closely to realize themselves. And how do we do that? When we build the buyback centers, currently we are dealing with 2,500 waste pickers, which are considered as the most vulnerable people. We provide social benefits for them. We train them, and also we offer good prices for the materials we buy from them once they have been disposed by other stakeholders that are in the market. So how do we do that? On monthly basis, we are able to provide them with PPEs like the gumboots, the gloves, and all that. Of course, some of them will use, others will not use, will not be able to do much to monitor how we use them, but the key people who are dealing with us, we are able to now to monitor on regular basis if they still have those things. But we try as much as possible to sensitize them for personal protection. And that's why also when dealing with that, we don't just go to the dump site and just say, hey, we are giving PPEs. No, we have formed groups. And of course, many people who have gone to the dump site, they know also dump site have structures. So we have the kingpins who are the main people running the show. And then now we have the guys who are working on them. The guys who are working on them are the guys when the truck gets into the dumping site, they cherry pick the waste, and then they sell now to the kingpins. Why do the kingpins come in? They come in because they had discipline. We can be able to deal with them through M-Pesa. And then again, we can't be able to deal with everyone bringing 10 kgs, 50 kgs, because they want, it gives me the 50 kgs, I give him the cash. See, that becomes very hard for operations. So we've been able to develop off-take markets for complex plastics. That's what Charles was saying. We have 2 recycling plants, one doing the flexibles, and the other one doing the HD and the hard plastics. And recently we are happy because now we are able to at least go as far as producing the pellets. I know when I talk about the pellets, if you've not been to a waste, you not understand what are pellets. Pellets is something that looks like rice, very small. So you only imagine the plastic that is collected, or a full bag of plastic is reduced into pellets. This pellet is the raw materials that is used by the local manufacturers. So that's where we are, and we are very happy to be able to also be able to recycle the single-use plastic. The single-use plastics are the takeaway plastics, you know, the soft ones. Yeah, so previously, I don't think there is anyone who was doing that. And there's a market for that. And of course, collection also becomes a challenge because you need to collect a lot of volumes to make sense because they are very light. So that's why we build the buyback centers to be able to collect, we bail, and then we further transport to the recycling plant. We are currently for the flexible plants. As you can see there, we are doing 1,200 kgs per hour for the washing plant. And when you go down there, you can see we are doing a monthly recycling capacity of 800 tons. That is tripling the Kenya's flexible recycling capacity. We currently have a team of 430 staff. Those are our staff that are working with us. Let me explain that. Some of the people wonder, do you also have the waste pickers as inside the Takataka Solutions? No. So the staff that work with us, who are on a payroll, is 430. We have 6 management team. And mostly we work with women, and now we have the men that support the women in terms of the support, or maybe collection. So the 2,500, the waste pickers, are the people that are stationed in the landfill. When the other private sectors go and dump their waste, or the government trucks, the municipal trucks goes and dump the waste, that's where now our sensitization comes in to empower these people, so that we can now create a more circular economy and also be able to make sure that every sensitization comes from there. Because now when the stakeholders goes to the dumping site and they know Takataka Solutions is buying plastics, many people have started, they call me and say, oh, I also want to start a buyback center. I say, fine, you come and learn. So I think that is our goal, to make sure that we are creating a sustainable agenda in waste management, and we have many, many people and many companies coming up for recycling. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nora. And I think Takataka has been with us from 2019. Yes. So it's very fascinating to see all the different, or rather the progress all through the years and what they've been able to achieve. So we Center, over to you.
Good morning. Charles said we don't wear suits in the the gig sector. But if you come to a facility, you'll find most of us will be in PPEs. So we started working with PPEs and masks even before COVID. All right. Okay, so for the We Center, we manage electronic waste. You ask yourself where your old phones, laptops, fridges, where they go. So 10 years ago, we realized that we didn't have a proper e-waste management facility in Kenya. So we took it up. We decided to provide a safe resting place for all the electronics. And for us, e-waste is not just anything that is dead. It is anything that is either obsolete or has also been overtaken by technology. So what that means is that if you have old equipment that is still working, but it doesn't work for you, it qualifies to be electronic waste. So if you have a mobile phone in this century that cannot take proper photos, or it cannot access the internet, some of these things. So that qualifies to come to the We Center. You don't have to wait until it is fully dead. You can move to the next slide. So what we run is a circular business, as you can see. Everything that comes to us, we ensure it goes through this process. It starts with the collection. So the e-waste is collected. We have collection centers across the country. We have all the Carrefour supermarkets have our e-waste bins. Now, the next time you go to Carrefour, pay attention when you enter. At the entrance, you'll find there's an e-waste bin where you can take your obsolete or equipment that has been overtaken by technology. Apart from that, we also have other collection centers. We have Nakuru, we have Kisumu, we have Mombasa, and we're also setting up others. So anybody can take their obsolete equipment to those centers, or if you go to our website, you can also fill a form, key in your details, and we'll organize for collection from your office or from your house. We also map out different estates in Nairobi. We've started in Nairobi, but we'll also be moving to other parts of Kenya, where we do estate drives. We go there on the weekend with our vehicles and bins, and we provide a place where you can bring your electronic waste. So that's on the collection bit. And then once it comes to a facility, before dismantling, we'll take all the data. So don't worry about equipment that has data. We ensure that it is properly destroyed, either mechanically, physically, or through software before it is handled in any other way. And then everything is dismantled to their own chemical family, the sorting, where now you'll have plastics. Plastics will partner with other recyclers that are here locally, and also others outside the country. So we shred the plastics that we have, and then we're able to provide that plastic as a raw material to build new plastic equipment. If it is batteries, we have planned for lithium iron phosphate batteries. We realize that most of the solar home systems and solar equipment, when they're not working, the consumer will not, of course, open it up to know, is it the battery, is it the solar panel, is it the cables? If the thing doesn't work, it doesn't work, and they dispose the entire system. So when we started receiving a lot of these items, we went into research and realized 80% of the lithium ion cells that are in those home lanterns and those batteries, they're actually working. So instead of taking them into recycling, we started repurposing those cells and building second life batteries. So the second life batteries now can be used in e-mobility. So we provide these to companies that are doing e-bikes. There are companies that are doing electric boats and any other use for batteries. So that's an example of another fraction that we're able to handle. So all the fractions, at this point, they will be either recycled, refurbished. So for example, if it is proper working laptops or desktops or mobile phones, once you've destroyed the data, we'll go into the refurbishment, which basically means giving it another second life. Once they're refurbished, a big number of those could be donated, or they can also be sold back to the market. Then now, when they reach end of their second life, they can come back now for the final disposal, where everything will be taken apart, and the parts can now be used for manufacturing of other items. Now, on that side, 51.3 thousand tons is what we are currently generating in Kenya annually. Yeah, and only 1% of this is what is accounted for as collected and properly disposed. So there is really huge potential. The reason those numbers are down is because of the lack of awareness. Some of us might have heard of WeCenter today for the first time. I was talking to her and I asked her, what will you do when your laptop reaches end of life? The answer that she gave I will not, not amplify here. Yeah? But I was, you know, there are a lot of Kenyans who have a lot of electronics. Most of these things that I'm seeing here, when they reach end of life, most people will not know what to do with them. So that's why you see, despite having such huge quantities that have been disposed, it's only very minimal that is being collected properly. And these things have hazardous metals. So they have over 1,000 heavy metals in them, from lead, cadmium, mercury. So the moment you just throw it in the bin, or it ends up in the dump site, or ends up in the river, you're actually indirectly killing the society and killing yourself. Because our rivers are the ones that still will irrigate the crops. Whether you buy it in the supermarket will not be importing the vegetables that you're buying. They have probably been bought from one of our farmers who has used water that has already been polluted. So that's why this is a big thing to be managed. Can we move to the next slide? So to date, this has been the traction. So we've done over 10,000 tons of e-waste. Yeah. So with the 10,000 tons of e-waste that we've safely disposed, we have saved the planet 14,400 tons of CO2 emission. In terms of jobs, we've created over 5,000 jobs to date. We have 630 agents, but the number has changed now with the KCGF funding. I'll show you what numbers we have now for that. In terms of revenue, average will be 85 million shillings a year. I think last year should have been around slightly 5 million less of 100 million Kenya shillings. We are ISO certified, both for environment and also for quality. So all our processes, we ensure that we are there to safety. All our workers have proper PPEs, and we are audited every year, both for so many things, sound, air, you know, for us to be ISO certified. Can move to the next. So these are some of the key milestones under the KCGF. When we started the KCGF, we only had the 630 agents that we were working with, but now we've taken that number up. We have in 1,200. These are people who are able to collect the e-waste from wherever they can get it, take it to our collection centers. So for example, I was even seeing this morning in the WhatsApp group for the company. We had a very late collection last night in Kisumu, where some of the collectors brought a whole truck of electronic waste to our facility. So with the 1,200, they are spread out across all our centers. And we paid them 20 shillings per kilo, like Charles said. And we are also working on another model where some of them will be paid up to 500 shillings per kilo because we've started to differentiate what has more value than some of these other materials. So there are certain materials that will even be paying more, up to even 1,000 probably per kilo of whatever they are bringing. So we will be training them again. So what we do, all our collectors, we ensure that we train them on health and safety. Majority of them are from the informal sector. So they have been collecting waste but not doing it properly in terms of the safety. If there are cables, they will burn the cables, remove the copper. A kilogram of copper is, before COVID, it was 500 shillings. Right now, it's up to 800 shillings. So for them, the more cables they burn, the more copper they'll get. But now we are training them so that if you're able to bring, for example, if it is the cables, we'll be able to value that and pay you more than the 20 shillings that we are paying. So within 3 months, we've managed to pay that group up to 500,000 shillings from whatever they've been able to collect and bring. And from that, we estimate that we'll be able to get up to 1.6 million shillings from whatever fractions that they have also brought to the waste center. On that side also, you'll see that during the same period, we've collected 25,000 tons. These have been spread in Nakuru, Kisumu, and Mombasa, where we've set up collection centers. The collection centers will also be soon upgraded to become pre-processing centers, whereby those that are collected in Kisumu can be managed in Kisumu. We create local jobs. Trade is done within Kisumu. They will only bring to Nairobi whatever it is that they cannot manage or that will need treatment. So the 3 collection centers are there, and we've also had 15 drop-off points, whereby these are bins that we are putting up. We have the ones that are mentioned in Carrefour. Safaricom has 52 shops. The 52 shops also have our e-waste collection bins. Those bins are spread out across the entire country. So these are shops that are directly managed by Safaricom, not the ones that are third-party owned. So all those shops also have our bins. And we are soon setting up at Total gas stations, some of them, so they'll also have bins for that. Can we move to the next slide? So in terms of potential, it's huge. Yesterday I was talking to some South Africans who are here to visit We Center, and they're saying it's a multi-billion dollar sector. Before they came, they were saying it's a multi-billion. So after they visited, they were saying it's a multi-trillion. So it means there's a lot of potential in terms of what we are doing, because we are dealing with rare earth metals. So when I see the shortage of lithium in the world, I spoke to a friend of mine who is also in the same business in Joburg, and he said, keep your lithium. You know, we have tons and tons of lithium, we have tons and tons of gold, you know. So if we are to get a proper way of getting proper value from whatever we have, the sector has a lot of value. But anyway, so we have increased collection now, our volumes. So we've been doing, say, up to 300. So that's a year. So we are looking at doing up to 450 this year because of the increased awareness we are doing and also the setup of the new collection centers. We've also increased our agents. Initially, we were doing the 630. So with the 1,200 and under the KCGF, it is our hope that will create 2,000 jobs. So when we have 2,000 agents, we'll be able to get more e-waste coming, and we'll also be able to get more value. There is very limited laws in Kenya when it comes to e-waste management. But of course, politically speaking, someone will tell you the constitution is sufficient to ensure that the environment is clean and safe from electronic waste. But we're doing a lot of advocacy to have the Management Bill 2020 to pass. We've also worked closely with the NEMA and other government stakeholders to have the e-waste regulations also in place. What that will do, they will create extended producer responsibility and the PROs, whereby the responsibility of paying for the e-waste that is being generated will be transferred to the polluter. So we'll have a polluter pay principle. What that means is that whoever sold you the camera will need to take responsibility, not only of selling it to you, but also to ensuring that when it is not working for you, they provide you with a solution of how it will be properly managed. So if that goes through, it will even now change all the dynamics, because it will be clear from the design of the equipment. It has to be designed in a way that is long-lasting, because of course you don't want to pay a lot of money for taking care of it. To the manufacturing, the manufacturer will have to build proper equipment. To the importers, they have to import quality. To the wholesaler, distributor, transporter, and to the consumer, you'll also want to buy equipment that you feel is circular. So that's about the potential. And then, of course, with now circular economy, there is more traction in the circular economy than there was before, and also climate. We are now a climate change business. We recently became, last year in 2021, we were first runners up for SunCalp as the most innovative climate business in Africa. This year, we are among the 15 climate change business enterprises also in Africa. So there's a lot of traction in climate and also in circular economy. So we feel that combined with the potential that is there in e-waste, there would definitely be a lot of potential to scale. I think this was my last slide, unless there's another one that's sneaked in. Yeah, this one sneaked in. Yeah, we focus on people, planet, and profit. So that's what we do at the WE Center. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie, for that, and for the presentations by the three firms, Buildher and Takataka. I'd have loved to open it up for Q&A, but in the interest of time, I'll push that to the next session. This session, I'd like to invite Mercy Odur. Mercy Odur is the deputy team leader at the FCDO, and she's the one responsible for KCGF. To come and speak briefly as we go into tea about what is the British interest on the gig economy in Kenya.
Good morning, everybody. I was hoping to avoid standing here. Charles knows I really hate making speeches, but thank you. Number one is to say thank you all for your time. Every time I come to this event, I'm amazed at the amount of work that is getting done by partners. It's amazing, the amount of work that you all are doing, the innovations that are out there. I'm not quite sure I really, we conceptualize it when we are doing these competitions until the work starts happening and we start visiting your businesses, and we are amazed at just how much is out there. I think for me, I'll be really brief, as you can see in terms of time. So for me, representing the UK government this morning, what do I say? Charles likes to say we are the owner of the fund. Really, we are not. We're basically funders to help these companies come to, you all stand around this table in your own right because of your ideas. All we do is to support those ideas so that we can push them to scale, to see how we can help you move to the next level. But the most important thing is for us is to ensure that we create jobs for young people in this country. That's where we started from, and that has always been our vision. And the vision for this program, so KCGF is a program that was designed by the UK government in Kenya, working in Kenya. And the idea was really, I always say it is one of our smallest programs, literally, in the organization, but one of the highest impact programs that we have. You'll be amazed at the impact that we say our smallest organization, like our smallest program, has the highest impact that we've got in the organization. So you should be really, really proud of the work that you're doing. And so me standing here I'm literally very, very humbled at having been sort of gotten the opportunity to work with all of you. Why did we do this? And very briefly, it's because, young people are coming out of universities, they're coming out from institutions of learning, and then they don't get jobs. And that can be really, really discouraging for young people. But it's just, the vision is to tell young people that solutions are with you, jobs are with you. And not only do you have jobs for yourselves, but you have jobs for other young people. And so, I was just listening. I came in just when Tatu was giving her presentation, and just looking at how much is getting done. Women in construction industry, we center and collection of e-waste. Who would have thought? Taka Solutions, really, definitely largest waste management in this country, and just who would have thought those solutions are with us? So every time we look at, we think about jobs and think jobs are white-collar jobs, walking into an office and someone giving you a job. And I always say, probably not in our lifetime anymore, but we are creating those jobs so that when young people come in, we're giving them opportunities to have, to have a gig, for example. For me to know that there's a place I can go and have a contract, a short-term gig for myself. Cottage industries where I can make stuff in my own house and sell it. There's a market for me out there to just be able to earn a living. When I think about youth, but definitely women being able to earn their own living because of finding solutions and just being able to create those jobs for themselves and for others. I like what we is doing. For us, climate change is a big thing. And we always say climate innovative solutions. We have solutions not only for jobs, but also very important for the climate, because we're going to be leaving this world for others to come after us. So yes, brief from me, just saying thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. And every time we run these roundtables, I learn so much. So for me, as I sit behind there, I'm learning more than any of you. And I appreciate your time. We never take it for granted. So thank you. And I give it back to Charles.
Thank you very much. While she was speaking, I received a text from a friend of mine who just informed me that their daughter is about to close university for a long break, and they're looking for a gig. All right, so Taka, we and Builder. I might just be coming. I just got a text right now. As we go into the break, I want to recognize the presence of Noreen Thiga. Noreen Thiga is representing the Office of the President. And she will then open the next session. She will give a talk at the next session and open at the next session as we go into the discussions, the panel discussions, and we have representatives from different sectors in the ecosystem that will be talking to us about what's their take from these three presentations, but critically what they're doing in their respective spaces to try and also disrupt and create opportunities for gig in those spaces, and what are the opportunities for plugging in. That's coming up in the next session, and that session will be ushered by Noreen, as she will address our presence. Thank you so much, and Imani will guide us on where T is at.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for the fantastic presentations to our grantees and the different partners. Yes, so we do have a 15-minute break for tea. It's clearly being set up outside, you can hear it. So you can have your tea, continue the very informal networking sessions. You can shoot in your questions for the grantees. You can already start sending those in from the presentations they've shared, and we're happy to collect them and have a more in-depth discussion after that. So yeah, see you in 15. that it should be elevated and strengthened through public-private partnerships and international efforts. She remains passionate and dedicated to this sector and has succeeded in advocating for SMEs' voices, ensuring that they are availed with seats at important decision-making tables and solutions are carried to realization for our Kenyan SMEs. Yes, wow, that's a mouthful to say, to just say that she's a superpower. So over to you, Noreen. We're happy to have you on here. Yeah.
Thank you, Alpha. Good morning. Is it still morning? Still morning. Wow. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You all look beautiful. I understand there was a code. Was there a code of no suits? Oh, I think government officials would have failed that. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning and listening and learning about all these businesses that are working towards supporting the gig economy. Build Her, We, Takataka Solutions, you know, you people are doing what needs to be done right now. We need to have a mind shift as a country. And I remember the other day, one of my colleagues at State Department of Urban, we've worked with him on the affordable housing program where we were able to plug in the Juakali artisans. So we were talking and then he told me, you know, Noreen, he looked very stressed. So I asked him, what is it? He said, you know, Noreen, my twins have graduated and they've been in the house for 2 years. So I said, okay. And you know that is something common. We hear it from relatives, please help me get so-and-so a job, please help my daughter, please help my son. So I just, you know, like brushed it off. Then I met him for another meeting and he looked now, you know, like downcast. So I called him aside, I'm like, hey, engineer, what's going on? Because he's a senior engineer, so I'm like, engineer, what's going on? So you expect with the networks that he has, you know, he's been able to get something for them. He said, bado wako nyumbani. And everyone I talked to, including, you know, your head of unit, the senior advisor to the president, everyone says they'll do something or they'll see or they'll think about it. But I told him, listen, those requests come in fast running. In fact, Charles, you're receiving one today for the gig. Eh? Those are requests that we receive. And I'm sure you can all attest to that, yeah? So later on, one morning, I just thought of calling him. Then I asked him, your children, the boy and girl, first the girl, what does she like doing? And he says, nowadays, just sleeping. I said, okay, no, let's not look at let's not look at her current situation right now. Like growing up, what have you seen her wanting to do? He says, oh, you know, she likes beauty, those things, applying a lot of what, makeup even. I said, okay. So basically, she likes beauty. Have you attempted to try and support her in that area? He says, there's no money there. In English, he says, apo hakuna pesa, there's no money. So I said, you're a man, you wouldn't know there's no money. My makeup artist charges me 3,500 to do they're called face beats. So why would you say there's no money? And that lady, maybe that day when she's doing your face beat, she has 5 other clients. So he said, I said, yes. He said, let's move on to the boy. So I said, what does he like doing? I said, hata sijui, lakini I don't know, but he's always on his phone. So I said, on his phone doing what? He takes nice pictures and he takes nice videos. Even the family calls him the family photographer. I was like, engineer bana, you've never seen all this. So I asked him, does he have a camera? Imagine he doesn't have a camera. I was like, even you're failing your children. I'm like, can you try and find out what it is that they like doing and then support that? Then you're being an intentional parent. Forget that I've spent so much money taking them to KU and what. Forget that. Their education will definitely top up to something later on. But we need to have a mind shift. So I'm very grateful to see that we have organizations that are actually being intentional on how it is that they provide the jobs. And I can definitely tell you, because we work with markets. How we work is from the bottom. Okay, now we're in a political season. So you can't talk about bottom up. But how we've always worked, and those who've always known the SME advisory like part of Kayana can attest, we work from the bottom actually upwards, whereby we don't sit in boardrooms as the SME advisory unit and come up with solutions. We go to the market. We go to Kikomba. We ask them, what are you going through? What it is that can be done. They say they need a new modern market. Now they have a new modern market. But if we sat in the boardroom, we would not have thought about that. We'd have thought of fighting off land grabbers who want to grab the space. You know, would have thought of maybe doing roads, and then we'll say, oh, unajua watatoka njiani, so they'll tutasumbuana. Then money will be earmarked for the roads. Then money will go the way it can go. So we will not have intentional solutions. But when we work with them, even in the rice value chain, they tell us, set good prices. Bring us mechanization. And that's what we've done. We've set the rice prices for the rice value chain. We've brought in partners who've brought in new mills. So when we look at a sector, we are able to look at the solutions because they actually lie with the traders. And thereby, you're able to quantify your results. So I'm very happy that we're supporting the circular economy. It is huge. Out there, it is huge. And I'm happy as a country, you know, an African country, we are also taking the first strides to look at it and see this is where the potential lies. Of course, SMEs still are taking a bit longer to adjust to that because they don't understand it. You see, when the concept is new, they don't understand it. But I can assure you, any entrepreneur, when you show them where the money is, they'll run for it. Even if you now start quantifying Takataka solutions, if you start quantifying and showing people that you can actually earn X, yeah, by having that center where you're able to collect, I'm telling you, you'll not even be able to fulfill the way people will come running. So let us work with those solutions as we become also climate smart, because that is where we are headed. And I'm sure that is where the job lies. Because as I started off, I said we need a mind shift. In fact, for me as a parent, I have a mind shift. My son loves football. I make sure I support that. And he tells me, Mama, one day we're going to go to Europe and you're going to sit in the stands and you're going to cheer me. I tell him, you good. You're going to do that. Yeah? Me, I've had a mind shift. I'll give him that education, but I know I'm grooming an international football player in my house. So if he says we're not going to watch any other program apart from those YouTube football videos, that is what we are doing. Yeah? So I encourage everyone, let's have a mind shift. Let's stop looking at the traditional. If your child wants to go to a technical school because you've noticed the skills, stop pushing them to the universities. We have technical schools that have been, you know, properly funded. They have the proper capacity, and they're able to train people. Don't look down upon these jobs. The day your pipe bursts, your water pipe bursts in the house, the bill you'll see, you'll appreciate that plumber. And if you're building, you know those fundis, if you're building and you keep track of how much it is that you're paying them, you're going to appreciate those skills. So let's not look down upon such, and actually let's support them, because me, I believe strongly that is where the money is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noreen. So without further ado, I'd like us to get into the panel session. We do have an incredible set of panelists. So Ms. Ndiga, I'd also like you to just take your spot as we start. Right up next is Ms. Alice Kimani from GIZ. She's the gig economy advisor at GIZ and previously worked in the Youth and Entrepreneurship Program with VSO and Equity Group Foundation, setting up a digital hub in Machakos. The hub linked more than 1,000 youth to online gig jobs, offering training and creating linkages for gig jobs. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And we're also joined by Dr. Grace Mwai from the Kenya Investment Mechanism at the USAID, where she's the Deputy Chief of Party. And in this capacity, she oversees the technical implementation of the program, unlocking over $520 million in finance and investments for businesses in East Africa. Dr. Grace believes that meaningful social impact and effective program implementation are not mutually exclusive. I think she's going to go into a little bit of depth into what she means by that. It'll be fascinating to see. I think that'll be the first question for you. What do you actually mean by that, right? And she continually seeks to deliver double bottom line. So this is social transformation and institutional goals by focusing on program outcomes and impact, operational excellence, and identifying inefficiencies. This way she creates innovative, sustainable solutions. Dr. Mwai has developed a record of consistent on-time project implementation, and she has over 17 years of experience leading teams on complex international development programs in Africa. She holds a doctorate in business administration. We're so happy to have you on here. Thank you. And Mr. Charles Warrior, who will be moderating our panel today. His bio is, yes. Mr. Charles Warrior will still be moderating the session today. But we're also joined by the CEO and co-founder of Ziada. Her name is Annabelle. And Ziada in itself is a tech-enabled support partner targeted at informal service providers in Kenya and beyond. And it offers to not only match service providers with local talents, but also bring value-added services to them, including equipment rental, marketing support, and business advisory. She's a serial entrepreneur with a background in operations and has worked to support small businesses optimize their operations and increase visibility to clients, and therefore increasing sales. Her professional experience spans multiple fields, from banking and security to agri-tech, overseeing projects across the African continent and driving sustainable and effective growth. Yeah, over to you, Charles. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah. We actually love it. Yeah, we didn't think about it, but yeah, looking at it, the optics look right.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm glad to moderate this particular session. We've had a great morning session, listening to 3 companies that are in the space of gig, and that are working hard every day to change how we perceive gig. Traditionally, we have had a certain perception of gig. When somebody says my gig, we see it as a part-time, low-quality job. You know, whenever people would say, "Get me a gig," like, you know, so I don't know, you know, what kind of gig are you looking for? You know, we don't have a gig right now. You know, so gig has been in a certain space, okay? But beyond gig, SMEs have also been in a certain space. So that people, when people talk about SMEs, people quite often see informal sector players, you know, small, you know, struggling to grow, you know, we're struggling to define who they are, whether should they be taxed or not? Should they be in the table or not? And that kind of thing. But now we're mixing this conversation, SMEs and gig, and beginning to appreciate that if countries in Africa and in Kenya are going to address the elephant in the room, which is unemployment and growing unemployment and a desperate youth, and understanding that our economies aren't strong enough to create the kind of formal jobs we're looking for. So we must rethink jobs, and we must re-engineer how we work, isn't it? And re-engineering is therefore saying, if these millions of SMEs in Kenya today, 7 million of them, employ over 80% of people who work in Kenya, okay? That's already a force to reckon with. That's already a force to reckon with. And if they can then get into the gig space and re-engineer how we see gig, you know, and bring in the tech and the innovation and the creativity into how gig then drives, from supply to demand, how gig then drives the growth of the country, and just we may just be able to address the unemployment factor, in innovative ways. I want you to notice something here, ladies and gentlemen, that Kenya's Office of the President has an interest in SMEs and how SMEs grow. Now, isn't that amazing? People who think the highest office in the country would probably know nothing about SMEs, or would not be interested in SMEs, isn't it? But here you have the highest office being interested in some of the smallest, lowest jobs, and wanting to see disruption in that space. But we also have funders like Kenya Investment Mechanism that are looking to see how can those spaces be disrupted to make SMEs more attractive to funding and more investor ready. We have Ziada, who are the people on the ground, linking the people who have the gig and people who do the gig, so that the gig seekers can find the people who are willing to pay for the gig, isn't it? And then you have another funder who's looking to say this is a sector that can grow, has potential to grow, GIZ. How can it grow, isn't it? Now, don't worry about the gender. I'm male, as females, that's the balance right there. And I like the panel. I'm going to put to them the first question, which goes to everyone. In the first session that we had, what stood out for you? What made you feel you were in the right room, listening and talking to the right people? Shall we start with you?
Yeah, thank you again. And just to repeat, my name is Alice Kimani, currently working for GIZ as the Gig Economy Advisor. And what I think about the first sessions and the presentations is the creativity that Kenyans have. For a very long time, I think we have been copy-pasting ideas as entrepreneurs, as we call ourselves. But now I can see real entrepreneurs coming out, creating their own ideas, very unique ideas. And Kenya is now sitting on a space where we can be recognized for our own ideas, including and not excluding M-Pesa, which is studied by everyone who goes to do MBA or something. And that is interesting because for a very long time we have been looking for outsiders to come and help us, but it's time that Kenyans, we help ourselves. And the only way we are going to help ourselves is by being creative, coming up with innovative ideas. And from where I sit, these are the ideas we're looking for, and these are the ideas we are looking to give more funding, because it's by enhancing these ideas that these companies are going to grow. So from this point, I see a lot of networks that are going to come out of this meeting. And I see a lot of growth that will come, not just from FCDO, but also from other organizations, including the German government. Thank you so much.
Thank you. As I said earlier, my name is Noreen Dega from the SME Advisory Unit. That is a department that is within State House, the Executive Office of the President. It's not a political office, so it's continuous. We shall forever be there, of course, maybe with different staff members, that focuses on the SME sector. So we work with government agencies, partners, and academicians, just to make sure that the SME space is elevated and supported, getting the right support. As we all know, the SME sector of Kenya is the engine of the country's economy, and we take care of our engines. But unfortunately, this engine is not well taken care of. It's not well maintained, well oiled and checked. So the SME advisory tries to bring people together to make sure if there's a certain aspect of opportunity, it can be followed through. I like the fact that I caught the 2 presentations, but I've also been briefed on Build Her, and the fact that it brings out the issue of job creation. Because SMEs, if you're providing 8 out of the 10 jobs in the country, by the way, they're the highest in fact, they're the employers, if you're going to say that. That is where the job lies. And as I said earlier, seeing it in numbers, just one organization such as Takataka Solutions being able to show you that 25,000 Kenyans have an opportunity to earn a wage or salary from them. I think that's a big thing. That's a big thing. That's one of them showing you what it is that they're able to do. So for me, I like that because it is more of evidence-based as well as a learning approach today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So for me, it's a lot of the organic conversations that happen in rooms such as this. I'd like to give an example of what Noreen just talked about with engineers' twins. And it'll sound a bit like a shameless plug, but I swear it's relevant. So speaking of makeup artists, we have that on the platform. You talk about photography and videography, we have that on the platform. She talked about if your sink is leaking and you need a plumber urgently, we have that on the platform. And what we're seeing is a very organic shift in people realizing that these are legitimate jobs that you can put on there, whether you have a degree or not. I think the stigma of needing some sort of education so that you can be on a platform or be found on a platform is dying. I'm very proud to see that. And the second thing that's going to sound like a shameless plug is one of our vanity metrics. Investors like calling it a vanity metric. The number of downloads that our app has, we're at about 57,000 right now. And it's usually called a vanity metric, but I counter that because for us, it's been largely organic. And that's been people who are seeking us out. And the number of people who have come to us through word of mouth or because they're seeking a solution like ours and had been frustrated because there was nothing in the market for this is overwhelming. So whenever this happens, and we're finding a lot of instances where people are coming to us, which is quite the opposite of a lot of businesses where you have to put a lot of money for people to find you. I think that shows that we're in the right space.
Good morning once again. My name is Grace Moai. I'm excited to be here, and I know it's an interesting fact for me because it's UK Aid, FCDO, and USAID in the same room. For me, that's already a plus, right, Charles? Yes, that's already a plus. So super excited to be here. I think looking at today's presentation, I'm looking at a graduation space. You're here, you've already done grants, you've already done blended finance. Then come to me. I support SMEs to raise capital. So you have the next partner on the table here at the front. I know you're smiling, Takataka, because we have raised 50 million for women-owned businesses, and we've already raised $50 million and $15 million for youth businesses. We have networked with financial institutions and business advisory service providers who are able to make you investment ready, and we actually subsidize with a smart incentive the fees that you need to pay for a transaction fee to the advisor. So we are present, we are available, and Charles, I'm excited to be here because then these businesses represent the impact and what we're looking out for in terms of jobs creation. To give you an interesting factor, 80% of the jobs that we've been able to create at the program have actually been youth, 80%. So what does that tell you? We are aligned and more conversations can happen. We have a position to be able to be a convener. So if we do not have the funding, because we're not a fund ourselves, we are able to bring people to the room who would be private equity capital providers, angel investors, or even financial institutions giving you debt. It could be convertible debt, it could be recoverable. And also we have blended finance partners. So I'm available, and I'm making a pitch, but I'm also saying there are people in the market ready to support you at the next stage. Thank you.
And that's spot on. That's spot on. So please do not let Grace leave the room without a direct contact, because then you need that next step, that next stage. But Annabelle, this question goes to you as the as a doer, and you listen to fellow doers, you know, and the question that has been put, and of course, Marcy from ASEC will chime in, is SMEs and innovations in this part of the world considered camels. Camels because they're slow, they face a lot of challenges, they don't tend to stay long on a path, because there are numerous barriers within the ecosystem that sometimes are not for them to overcome. And even if they wanted to overcome, the cost of overcoming those barriers is humongous, and it requires a multi-stakeholder approach. But as a doer and listen to fellow doers, you know, in the gig economy, what are some of the key barriers to growth and scale that you see? You know, what stops you from having 2 million guys on your platform, you know, and seeing a lot of disruption in that space? What are those barriers that stops you and most likely stops the other speakers from going to scale and being what you should be and moving from being a camel to a unicorn?
I want to see how many guys will agree with me, because I want to say money. I want to say money. I think we do a lot with what we have, and one of my mottos is do what you can with what you have. If you have 100 shillings, there's something that you can do with that 100 shillings. But there's only so much that 100 shillings can get you. I have a bit of beef with the amount of investor readiness that African startups are offered, because sometimes it ends at the investor readiness and there's no next step. That coupled with the amount of traction or validation that is required of a lot of African startups before investments can come to us. How I think some of us are countering it, so myself and a few of my peers, is doing a lot of collaboration. So I'm thinking of an example. There is, on paper, she's a competitor, but she did a pivot. But she still had clients who are coming into her asking for the services that she's no longer offering. But she was kind enough to send them over to us, because it's not of any benefit to just drop them off at that point. So we're countering it by exploring other ways, because even with our service providers, when we ask them the biggest challenge, the first thing they say is capital, which is the same thing I've just said, ironically. But when you dig deeper and ask them, so what's that capital going to? They tell you it's going to buying products, it's going to hiring, it's going to tools, it's going to hiring accountants and lawyers and stuff like that. And it's literally the same thing for us. So at Ziada, at least personally, we're partnering with people who, it's kind of like a skills exchange. Because if I was going to spend money on a lawyer and they saw that we raised some amount in December, even if it's, I realize startup fees are startup rounds are starting to sound a bit, I want to say mad, because the amounts that people are raising are just going higher and higher. So you're kind of being given bills according to what they found out about your raising or your fundraising. And the terms of the fundraise are not always public, so you might not even have this money at your disposal yet, as much as you've announced it. So a lot of collaboration, so that if my expenses are going to be around legal or marketing, which for us is a very big spend right now, you get somebody who's good at the marketing, and they come in and you sort them out on that. I'm good at ops, and I've been coming in to help people with their ops and their admin, and then we kind of cancel out. And I think I'm seeing that as one route for us to get to the unicorn, because you're getting unstuck without the dependency of outside capital, which at some point we have to break free of, because it's not a guarantee. Yeah, that's been my experience.
So, first of all, what's GIZ's interest in the gig economy in Kenya? That's what. But second, just from what Annabelle spoke about, in terms of the ecosystem and getting people to work together within the ecosystem, if these SMEs are going to grow and continue to create the jobs they're going to be creating, is there something that GIZ is doing in that space in the ecosystem, or is GIZ still looking for the scattered camels and trying to support the camels just like everyone else is doing?
Okay, thank you. GIZ has started a program on gig economy, and actually we are piloting with Kenya. I think Kenya becomes a good testing ground for most of the organizations. And what we're doing, we're looking at, we are focusing on 3 areas. One of the areas that we are focusing on is on the skills and rights of workers. Because as much as we are talking about gig workers, who is standing out for them? Like for instance, there is a case that happened last year where there was a case about Uber drivers. They don't know where they stand. Are they employees of Uber? Who employs them? Who covers them in case they need representation? And those are the things that we are looking into, and ensuring that the gig workers at least get support in that area. They need to know on their rights. The aspect about decent work, what is this decent work? And when you talk about gig, a lot of people think of a situation whereby a worker will be misused because probably they do not know of their rights. So one of the areas we're looking into is bringing these gig workers together, because unless the gig workers are going to have a union or an association that takes care of them, then everybody is on their own. A plumber will be on their own. Nobody to speak to, for their rights. Nobody can be able to hear their voice. The second area we are looking into is the labor platforms. Where are these jobs accessible? And are we creative enough as SMEs? I know most of us here are talking about SMEs. Are we creative enough to offer platforms for gig workers? Or are we just doing it the traditional ways that someone has to come to my shop and work for them to be paid? Because there are several other ways and several other platforms that these jobs can be offered without somebody even leaving their house. And I can give an example of someone who has developed an application, Fundi's application, whereby if you need a fundi, a plumber in your house, you just go to the app and you're able to link, you're able to assess who is rated highly as a plumber, and you're able to get a plumber from that platform. And these are the labor platforms that we are talking about. If we are able to create, if as GIZ, we are supporting these SMEs so that they can create more employment. Because if employment is coming from gig work, you have to support those companies that are creating these jobs, and that is one way we are doing about the gig work platforms. The third focus is policy and regulation. As you all know, the first document that was written about digital work and gig work and digital economy was just recently in 2019. Just imagine, all through Kenya has come without a policy on digital platform, on digital work. A whole country, as in we call ourselves a country anyway, but without a document that we can showcase, a blueprint that we can showcase that this is the blueprint that we are going to use as a country. But I'm happy that we are eventually waking up to the call, and these documents are being developed. And we are hoping probably the next government will take up the work. And at least if we are focusing on employment, we need to be called on the table. We need to be called on the table, and our voices need to be heard. Thank you.
I'll put this question to Noreen, based on Alice's last comment on policy. Noreen, I feel it for the president. You know, he has a passion wanting to address unemployment, and for the youth to create jobs. And then I feel it for you too, because then so you you and your team are trying to drive this SME, and SME development, and then and everybody else who talks to SMEs, this the lamentation is almost near permanent. The environment for doing business, the taxation, the not so friendly regulatory framework, and the whole harassment by government, But what struck me was where the government put in a fund, 3 billion shillings fund, as a guarantee for SMEs to then go to the bank, 7 banks, and access credit. Uptake was 4%. So there is something that's holding SMEs from even coming forward and accepting that the environment can change and we can walk into a bank and get the money. They didn't believe the government. Yeah, uptake at 4%. Yeah, and I saw the CS reduced it now from 3 billion to 1 billion this year. So government is government accepting that SMEs are incorrigible? They don't need funds, or what's happening? But from where you sit, why aren't SMEs and governments not moving towards each other? There seems to be a rift, and the rift is SMEs see it, government doesn't seem to see it.
Good. First, thank you very much for that question. The program you mentioned was a partial credit guarantee scheme, and it's originated from our office, the SME Advisory Unit, whereby we were able to call partners and went to Treasury with this idea that was done. We collaborated with AFDB, AGF, Treasury, and AG's office, and we finally came up with this idea. Of course, when it got to a higher level, there are people who need to protect themselves. So, of course, Kenya bankers would have to follow the regulations that banks do follow, and we cannot change that. And some of the regulations required are, an SME has to have good books. You have to keep your books, the basics. So I would not say the 4% is because the program failed, no. The 4% happened because SMEs don't have proper books. So which bank is going to, even if the government is saying they're taking up your risk, because we're taking up the risk so that SMEs can get money. Because before that, banks were saying we cannot lend to SMEs because they're high risk. Mtu anapatiwa pesa, huyo unasikia ameenda US or Dubai, or they've closed that business and you can't trace them. So government said, okay, we'll take up the risk. But even as the banks got that money, they didn't have the requirements to meet the facility. So that is the real reason what happened. But also, we realized that a lot of SMEs relying on mobile banking, mobile facility.
Just while you're not thought, and because you've put the SMEs on the spot, I just wanted to recognize the presence of our friends from the SME Authority. Yeah, they're right there. You got the point, isn't it? You got the point. Yeah, she said SMEs weren't ready to take the money. So ponder about it for a second.
Msea is our baby, so we speak the same language. So the SMEs were getting the money from the mobile facilities, which is good because it means we've advanced technology-wise. Yeah. So now anything is a learning curve. So here comes the learning curve. How about central bank? Let's look at a way of supporting digital lenders, because you remember they were being squeezed at the throat. In fact, I think at one point they had been shut down, and then now we moved to the the books, the regulatory, to the CRB now was squeezed, trying all ways and means to try and regulate them. But now they have regulations. They cannot call your auntie and your uncle and your grandmother in the village to say you owe 3,000 bob, right? So now they're behaving, and we have more investors coming into that space. So the partial credit guarantee now brought growth, because now we are thinking, how do we support these digital lenders? perhaps they should be the ones getting the support or a fraction of the support. So discussions are going on with ICT and Safaricom to see how we can come up with such. On the policy side, I like the way anything happens and someone points the finger at the government. Your house is carried by floods. We see on news your house is carried by floods, and they say tunaomba serikali. And when you're building that house at a place where you were even told by the local chief, please don't build there, serikali was not there. So, but it's good. It means then you actually look at the government as your parent, which is a good thing. It means, there's that relationship. It's not broken where you feel like you don't need the government. Because I can tell you for a fact, there are areas in Kenya right now who operate and don't need the government. Have you been to Mkuru, kwa Nchenga or kwa Ruben? They have a system that doesn't involve the government. Yes. Those people have, I think, when you're alienated, you conform and find your way of working. Their security is provided by Mungiki. Their electricity and water and everything, they found a way to work. And that's why when you tell them formalize your business so that the government can be able to work with you, they ask you, why should I formalize? These people provide me security for my business. I don't need that license because there's no one coming here to disturb me, to ask me for this. And the day I say, I need this, mtaro in front of my business redone, it's redone. And that's not the government. So you see, even when we found out that, we had a mind shift because we realized you cannot have some places where they don't need the government. And that's why you see, there's infrastructure, roads are going in there. Now you go to Mkuru and you find the Cabro roads, you find the hospitals, they have good hospitals. Yeah? Because you cannot have a place like that. So that relationship between the citizens and the government is very important. On policy side, you mentioned that there's no policy on gig economy. And that brings us back to collaboration. All the government does, and governments all over the world, is to create an enabling environment. Look at the infrastructure and look at the development of the country for businesses to be able to carry out their day-to-day. Who are the important people in this equation? Believe it or not, it's the private stakeholders. Why is KEPSA so successful and calm in pushing the agenda for manufacturers in the private sector? Because they have a voice. They have a voice and they come together and they do things collectively. But can you imagine if the different networks we have in Kenya, and I think this conversation had started a while back, we have different pockets of SMEs. If they were all able to come together and talk in numbers, then they'd just be like KEPSA and come. Who can call the CS of industry today and stop her from doing what she's doing because she needs to meet with them? Because they have a voice. But because SMEs, I think also we've not been able to organize ourselves in that way. And the private sector also are operating in silos. Everyone is doing trainings for bookkeeping, for financing, for networking, for communications. We're doing all those trainings. Then perhaps there's no build-up to that. Or perhaps there's no follow-up with that SME to that. They've gotten their certificate. One SME in Kikuyu told us they've gone for so many trainings. They've done them all. They've done MasterCard. They've done them all. In fact, even nowadays, they know. They can tell you, I met you at this training. And I met so-and-so at this training. And when you ask that person, so, okay, why aren't you able to keep books for your business? And they say, ile tulienda tukafundishwa hapo, mi hata sikuona vile itanisaidia. You get. So we're all operating in silos in the private sector. What if we came together, even just having USAID, UKAID, FCDO in the room? That's a big thing. If they could just come together and create something together, I think it would have greater impact. So from the policy side, it is your voice that requests for that policy. I can tell you and assure you that all policies that are created, they come from the citizens' requests. Unless you have a forward-thinking leader, such as Sakaja, who would push for the startup bill, everyone is, you know, at policy level pushing for different things. But if the voice asks for something, and you'll find even the startup bill had backing from the private sector, then that way it can go forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. For our comms team, I'd request that you don't capture the last sentence about Sakaja for political reasons. It's okay. But Noreen, you've mentioned some things that that reflect on the SME space. For example, that the reason why the uptake of the credit scheme was low because they don't have books. But you also mentioned something about lack of voice. You know, they're not able to come together to then, you know, speak with government from a united front. Marcy here, the CEO, is the CEO or chairperson? CEO of the Association of Startups in Kenya. I'm sure she didn't look at you directly, but she was speaking to you about, you know, we're not seeing you, we're not hearing you now. If we had you and we saw you, perhaps something would shift. But she also spoke to this whole question of, you know, and KIM is doing a lot around building this readiness, you know, and building an ecosystem of business support services and all. So, Grace, do you want to speak to? Do you want to respond to this? Is it true that SMEs really don't have books?
Yes and no. And let me explain myself. In our work as part of business advisory service providers aggregators, we have 40 business advisory firms, and you'll be excited to know that over 10 of them are women-owned, women-run. Okay. So what has been happening in our conversations with them is that we are finding SMEs that are investment ready, but the market is not ready for them with patient capital. So majority of them are actually excited to grow their business. They're excited to bring in debt or equity providers into their business, but they're not getting the exact type of capital they need. And what do I mean by patient capital? They possibly want to use their distributor cycles, they want to use supply chain financing, they want to be able to, if they're in agriculture, they want to be able to use the productive cycles, the harvesting cycles to be able to pay their bills. So there's a section of SMEs that are actually crying out for financial products that suit their needs. So we're also working with financial institutions and private equity firms to be able to structure what that financial product would look like and what are the factors that they need to look at. Then you have the typical ones that Noreen has talked about. They have existed, they have made money in the past, but they possibly didn't do good books, they're possibly not even audited, or they also have a business model that needs restructuring. They have a governance issue that they need additional members to come into the business and just bring up the governance tools and the systems. So those we are also able to work with. So we're able to come in and give you advisory, and we don't do the training and leave you. I liked your advice there that, you know, you have to go beyond the training. So we work with you from a structure of mentoring and coaching. So we work with you, walk with you as you do your pitch decks, work with you as you grow your business. So even after you get the financing, we're able to work with you to grow that business. So a transaction advisor becomes like a typical legal officer that you work with when you're doing mortgage business or when you're doing company startup. So we are encouraging Kenyans and trying to convene the market to understand that transaction advisory and business advisory has changed. The mind shift has come, that these are people you need. And I'm happy that I talked to Bonnie earlier when I was asking about his fundraising at WE, the climate change and waste management for e-waste. He told me that his strength is not fundraising, which is an honest opinion for many starters of SMEs and founders. So what do you do if your strength is not fundraising? If you don't even know where to get the money or who is providing what, then you come to people who are business advisors. So I'm encouraging SMEs to start having a startup kitty or a retainer kitty, because you need a business advisor. You need somebody who's walked the talk, who knows who to speak to, what to say when, and how and what not to say. Because in some meetings, if you pitch and say some things, if your ratios, for example, do not add up, people be like, well, maybe come next time for the other round. The other bit that we are learning even as we work, because we work in policy, and I like that we're discussing policy, is that some of the enabling environment, if you're not targeted, with some of the asks, especially on financial services, in agriculture, and some of the sectors like water, sanitation, waste management. If those policies do not exist, then you're not also able to attract aggregators or people who are able to give you funding that is large, that then aggregates the SME to a grouping or an association. So we're working in specific policy sectors to see how best to catalyze private sector funding. The uniqueness about Kenya investment mechanism, and we like to say this, is of the capital that we've raised to date, none of it is US government. We have catalyzed and convened partners who are private sector 100% to invest in those businesses. So it can happen, because then with the convening power, we're able to connect the dots and do the market linkages. I don't know if I've answered your...
You did, but it brought then a follow-up question to Annabelle. And Annabelle, feel free to pass to Marcy if you must. I imagine you probably will. Both Noreen and Alice agree that Kenya doesn't have a strategy or a policy for gig economy, which pretty much means that if you're in a gig sector, you're waiting on your own. You make it as you go, you know, which some people will say fake it till you make it, isn't it? In this particular case, we're not faking it. You're doing figuring it as you go. But when you look at that space, the ecosystem, is it more of everybody trying to survive, companies trying to survive, or is there room for a collaborative approach to start talking about what would a national strategy or a national policy look like to then strengthen how the sector negotiates for certain gifts from government? I mean, if the cost of doing gig and setting up gig platforms and all that is going to go down, somebody needs to speak to government. And it's not one company, two companies. It needs to be a voice from the sector. But when you work in a sector and when you see the sector, what do you see as the opportunities for that to happen, for the sectors to be more collaborative in the ecosystem and find an approach where they can use to then speak to government and negotiate for certain incentives to grow the sector?
It's a bit of a hard one. Wow. So there's...
Feel free to pass the baton. I'm trying to get Marcy to speak. So
I'm definitely going to give it to Marcy. But there's definitely been an attempt, at least in my industry. I don't know if Chris is still around. There's an association called the Job Tech Alliance. And it's Africa-wide. It's being run by Massicor. And I think one of the agendas is to put some of these frameworks in place so that we do have a larger voice. It's the only initiative that I'm part of and the only initiative that I have heard of. So I can't speak too much more than that being my experience. But there have been very small strides. I think it's been about 4 months since I joined, or since it went up. There's been strides, and there's a long-term plan. But I think also because we're not very together, it's going to take a while. So we might have to pull in Marcy and a couple of other people to support us, and I think that way we can make larger strides, as I pass on the microphone to.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. And Charles, finally I'm speaking, okay. Yeah, so my name is Mercy Kimalat. I'm the CEO for ASEC. I just joined in January, so maybe that's why it's not, you're not seeing more of what we do, but we're very committed to the mission. ASEC stands for the Association of Startup and SME Enablers of Kenya. We're a membership association of 50 plus innovation hubs across Kenya, and they actually support entrepreneurs in different sectors and across different services. So training, capacity building, investment readiness, access to markets, and even creating those collaborations with different partners so that the SMEs can actually thrive to increase their impact and also help them to grow in terms of their sustainability and also their cash flows, basic business fundamentals. Just responding on the policy bit, one of the things that we really saw, and it's actually one of the key pillars of ASEC, is policy. Before 2019, that's when ASEC was formed, we all used to run to the government. Oh, why are you only giving money to SMEs? What about us as the enablers, like Synapis and different other innovation hubs, that are actually supporting the SMEs to work? And also, in a way, we are also entrepreneurs who are supporting the other entrepreneurs. So it becomes a double-sided thing. And then the government said, but you're not organized, just like what Noreen said. We are not organized. So you can't have someone running from Nakuru going to the government, someone from Kisumu, someone from Lamu. And that's when now the founders of ASEC came together. These are all founders of innovation hubs. They came together and actually formed ASEC for the pure purpose of having a voice for the startup economy, right? Because also startups, not many people understand how it works and even the mechanism, and even what kind of support they need. Because if you look at what Annabelle is doing, it's innovation. It could be, she's doing something today, she pivots. By midnight, she has a new business idea, she's running off with it, and you're wondering, but I thought you're selling shoes on your website, now you're selling this, So how then do we design those mechanisms or even interventions to enable to support the startups, right? And even SMEs. So one of the things that we did this year was actually sign an MOU with the Kenya National Innovation Agency, which is being led by Dr. Mwansa, and the key purpose for that was to see how do we structure the innovation ecosystem within Kenya. Because again, people are looking to Kenya as a blueprint for the rest of Africa, right? If you find people who come to Kenya for different conferences and events, they always say Kenya is really it's really making strides in terms of how they're supporting entrepreneurs. We're the third largest economy in Africa, and that's a good thing to celebrate. But we need to increase the efforts to become number one. Remember, also we're competitive. So one of the things that we're looking at is creating a national policy framework, which will now look at how do we support innovations that are coming across all sectors. So even tapping into the Juakali sector, tapping into the manufacturing, agri-food, wherever they are, and even especially the gig economy, right? So with this kind of policies that are coming up, and like you said, it's private sector that drives it because we understand the main challenges. So even, for example, like the startup bill was actually an inception that came from ASEC alongside other partners, right? That we actually came and said, we need to have a framework, first of all, to recognize something called a startup, and then design that innovation in the conducive environment around it to thrive, and also seeing how it plugs into different ecosystems as well. So with that national policy framework, we're then able to bring in other collaborators. Another thing that also we've seen a lot happening is the silos. We're not speaking to each other. Some of us are doing duplication efforts within the ecosystem. So what we're trying to do is, like now we are launching, we're doing a needs assessment for mapping of the entrepreneur support organizations in Kenya. And then we're going to come up with a digital platform where now we're actually able to map out all the innovation hubs in Kenya. And then now the second step is now mapping out the SMEs and the startups. Now that becomes an interesting discussion because now we're looking at it from a value chain perspective. Right? And then the other interesting discussion, which is also part of the Kenya National Innovation Partnership, is now linking innovators to research. Right? So it's great that we can have a policy for now, but actually some of the policies are outdated, some of them. We now need to engage academia to now say, how then do we build better policies, better programs, and even thinking about outside the box. How do we actually even commercialize some of those research that are sitting in the university shelves? Bring them out, give it to the innovator like Annabelle, let her be the one to implement, let the incubation hub come in and provide that supportive framework, access to markets, linkages, business model, the advisors, etc. And then now plug them into now a scaling program, now looking at how do you now accelerate your business by tapping into investment. So it becomes a value chain approach, and then our policy creates that conducive environment. And that's the main role that now government comes into play. But at the same time, it's a good collaboration between private sector and then also the government, as well as other partners. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You see, I knew you had to speak. I knew it was important that you speak, because you have not only spoken to how the startups and the SME enablers are organizing themselves, but you also pointed to the need for a tripartite collaboration between the MSMEs, the startups, the funders, but also the government. All right, and that it puts the funders on the spot. I mean, funders, the SMEs and the startups are organizing. They're coming together. Are funders going to remain siloed in their approach, or are funders also going to organize, Alice? Yeah, from the perspective of GIZ, is it okay to keep working as GIZ, or is there something that you're thinking differently in the funding space, that you organize as they're organizing, and then you and them and you speak to government together? Is that something possible?
I think, of course, a voice, a higher voice comes from people coming together and pulling resources together and putting their minds together. So I think it's good we stop working in isolation, because we are working towards achieving the same goal. And the goal is to deal with unemployment in Kenya. So it's good that all these stakeholders are here, and I'm happy that FCDO is represented, USAID, UKAID, and now we have the German government. So if we come together, that will be a higher voice, and of course being supported by the SMEs, because the SMEs have the practical feel of what is happening out there. So if we are pushed by all these forces, then I think the government will be a small issue for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to open it up to the plenary to share your comments. But I want to give this chance to Noreen to just speak to where is the convening power of government when the reorganization is taking place. You feel like government is ready to convene and get Kenya to have a gig economy strategy or something like that?
Absolutely. I think as government and and citizens first, the role starts, basically the onus lies with the citizens. Whereby don't ask what your government can do for you, but ask what you yourself can do for the country. And I think that approach has worked in most developing countries. For example, Singapore. It's the citizens who've actually pushed for the growth of their country. And even when you look at the ones under authoritarian rule, let's agree that some it's authoritarian, but you'll see it's the citizens that have actually been able to bring in development. So I feel the government has matured. We've definitely matured compared to other African countries. And the support is there, and it's very, very intentional. We have good policies that, gather dust on the shelf. In fact, the countries that have been able to borrow our policies, people say, Rwanda is very, very beautiful. The brains that have developed Rwanda have come from here. They've borrowed policies. And okay, that, diplomacy does not stop that from happening between countries. But that goes to show we have the brains to actually pull through, get the gig policy. Once we have representation of numbers that's actually showing this is important and also guiding the process. You see, you're not going to show government we need a gig policy and leave it at that. Most of these officials will be in the boardrooms, not knowing what is happening, or in their offices, not knowing what is happening on the ground. But if you come through such as a startup policy with a guide, and you stick through the process as that gig policy is being developed, I think that is very, very possible. And for the government also, we've been crying for them and requesting them to be intentional. And we've seen the results. The MSEA authority has been strengthened. You are at a good place, right? And those who follow them, please follow them on Twitter. They are doing a lot. I don't even know how they do it. They are doing so much, the MSEA authority. And if strengthened more, I feel that we can have then a voice that speaks for MSMEs. Because if, we can't wait for also the sector to organize itself. We'll give them time. But even you as an authority, and I'm going to maybe put that, you can tell Mr. Riva I said that, task on him. If you're able to take the lead in being able to speak for SMEs as the sector organizes itself, I think that would be a good thing. But of course, please be reminded, MSEA is a government agency, so the private sector is still very much required. And a mapping. Let's have a mapping. When you're talking about, fine, we don't have classification, World Bank, IFC, AFDB, everyone has agreed we don't have a proper classification of MSMEs. But as a country, we should be able to do a mapping. We should be able to know the sectors. Because now we all rely on Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And of course, they're not able to comprehensively cover that. But as a country, you know, even those ones who probably are doing their PhDs, maybe they need to look into that. Let's have a mapping of the SME sectors. Let's have a mapping and know these are the different sectors that we have, and these are the numbers. Just yesterday, we were asked, because of this inflation that's going up, we were asked, do we have a kiosk owner association? The whole room went quiet. We started looking at each other. And then later on, I thought about it. I was like, actually, kiosks play a very integral role, and the mamambogas, but they have no representational voice. Yet you see, this voice would have made a difference now as we talk about unga, bay, and all those. Because supermarkets are not going to complain about the prices. But the mamamboga, because the sales have been affected, would have something to say. And the kiosk owner. So again, I think we need a mapping where we know the numbers, and when people see the numbers, they're able to come into an association, even in those groups, the way we have Boda Boda Association, Mitumba Association. You know, let's have all those sectors in groupings where we know the numbers, understand the issues, and then we as a government are able to create an enabling environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noreen. As I open it up, based on your last comment, really, there's been an ongoing debate. There is actually, you'll agree with me, there is an association of informal traders in Kenya. But even that association of informal traders they're not forthcoming in engaging with government and being vocal, because the membership pulls them down. Why does the membership pull them down? Because the membership sees it as a journey towards formalization. And they say, look, formalization means being in the government radar. Being in the government radar means KRA, taxation, and we don't want that. So they're trying. They want to come out. The kiosks want to come out and be in the membership. But kiosks, imagine membership, formality, KRA. No, not today. Let's talk another time. But anyway, it's something that we've been trying to see. You know, how do you, even as we work, because we have programs that are working with kiosks in terms of digitization. But how do you strengthen that, and how do you get them to digitize, formalize, and access more funding, more commercial funding, and all that? So we'll continue with that conversation at a later stage. But I'd like to open it now to questions, comments, from the audience. If you have a question or a comment, you raise your hand and we'll pass the mic to you. There's Pat. Let's start with Pat, then we'll go to Mercy.
Hi, thank you very much for organizing this forum, and Sylvie for getting me here. I really appreciate. So I'm a newbie in this ecosystem conversation. So the tips and basically what we're talking about is really insightful for me. My background really is in entrepreneurship, so I'm those startups that you guys are talking about. And then decided to go into to create an ecosystem for female entrepreneurs, because I really felt strongly that women needed a lot of support in growing businesses. I usually use numbers, so above the $1 million, annual turnover. So I felt that, I felt my journey could be interesting, and how can I share it to other women was just to bring these women somehow together. And then I realized that, it's being called something. It's called an ESO. And then when I have to describe what I do, I'm told, okay, maybe it's an accelerator. Is it an incubator? So really, it's been a learning curve with Kayana for the last 4 years. I read somewhere that we can't innovate our way through bad policies. Is it something like that, yeah? And I think we need to think through the entrepreneurs that we're talking about. We have struggled to raise and grow our businesses in a very difficult environment, right? And when we look at regulators, as we talked about KRA, especially for women, we actually look at it as a stumbling block to growth and to growing our businesses, amongst many other barriers, when it comes to growing businesses. So what we did at Kayana is we decided to make these obstacles our friends. And anybody who knows Patricia knows I am obsessed with collaborations, absolutely obsessed with collaborations. I don't believe in competition. I'm like, where can we join forces and solve this problem? And somehow convinced KRA to do that. And we signed an MOU with them in February, and today, this week and next week, we have business clinics running at Kayana, where entrepreneurs come in and share with them in a non-threatening environment the challenges they're having with the regulator. We can't jump that stage. There's so much, and I'm sure Noreen, you'll talk about it, there's so many things that are happening to ensure that each business, not even business, each individual earning, whether it's in the gig or informal environment, that you become a taxpayer. We're not gonna fight that. It's gonna happen. So we have to get over ourselves. So what we do, as an example, is get the private sector, bring government to the table, figure out our soft spots, and this is spoken, I'm speaking as somebody who has been, what is even the word to use? I have experienced the darkest side of KRA. So it's not something I'm doing, going in blindly and doing. But surely through conversations and speaking and talking and sharing our experiences, we hope to see more women entrepreneurs not look at it as a hurdle, but look at it as a necessary evil in order to grow and scale your businesses. So truly, speaking from the ground, there's work to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Pat. And Pat, that was also a call. You made a call right there for these entrepreneurs to then, plug into Kayana, plug into those sessions, get to listen to some of the speakers, get to benefit from the clinics, and so I'm sure as they try to grab the panelists here, they will also try and grab you to say when is the next clinic, how can they join, and we will also be very deliberate about nudging companies to plug in and benefit from that. And also just to mention that I saw you were part of Sheena's UK Tech Hub's launching of the regulatory business environment regulatory toolkit for SMEs. So you want to speak to that? Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really awesome how all these projects that we do, and we were even just talking at the table here, they're funded and they're out there in the great, big, wide world. But how are the entrepreneurs really plugging into it? The only way they can really plug into it is, yes, use ESOs and the ecosystem to get that information out. But unless you show it how it's relevant to them as entrepreneurs, and remember they have their heads in the trenches, so they don't really know what's going on out here. How do we get to that entrepreneur and enable them to use these things that are being funded and being developed for their use? And it's a challenge, because people are busy running their businesses and they've got many things. So we come up with, ideas. One of the ways in which recently we launched some case studies. I think they'll also be, they'll be launched pretty soon, maybe in May, where we went and spoke to entrepreneurs to speak candidly about their journey through business. Because it's not linear, we're talking about it, there's a lot of challenges. Some businesses actually fail, and I'm putting that in quotes because there's so much learning in that process of failure, but we're not sharing that information with the entrepreneurs. So trying to figure out where will we get these entrepreneurs to know these products that are out there and have been developed from them, how do we get them to use them? And certainly, and I mean, if it wasn't for working with the SME Advisory Office, I wouldn't know amazing people who are working in government down to county level, because government is this amorphous body out there that's not supporting us or helping us. So through these collaborations, we're talking down to the entrepreneurs in our ecosystems. And when I say speaking is, the business, and you tell them, did you know that this product is available for you? And then getting them to use it. Just the same way we're talking in rooms like this. So a lot of work to be done in private sector as well as in government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me also just mention that Patricia is also an author of a great book, An Entrepreneur's Handbook. Right. So please do not let her leave. Because if you don't need the book, you will find someone who needs the book. It's a simple read. It guides the entrepreneur step-by-step process on how to run a small business. Yeah. So please do share with them.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Marcy, please.
I think Patricia just took the words from my mouth. It's amazing. For me, I think And Noreen, it will always come back to you. It's difficult for us to have this conversation without the whole issue about the enabling environment. And the reason why we always come back to government is because government is the duty bearer. And you owe it to the Kenyan people. Sorry, you are the representative of government as at this point. And it's hard for us to leave this conversation without talking about the role of corruption. And it's because the cost of doing business in Kenya is high. Let's just tell the truth, whether it's from the SMEs or even investors, including, like investors coming from out there. One of the key issues they struggle with when they come into the Kenyan market and why we're losing investors to other countries that are easier to work in is the cost of doing business in this country. And that falls down in terms of the whole enabling environment, both just for the Kenyans themselves, but even for investors who would want to be part of this journey. But we make it so difficult for them to just breaking into our market when they know this market is a viable market, but it's such a costly market to do business in that they'd rather move to Rwanda. They'd rather move to a country that is easier for them to do business. And I know it's unfair for me to put you in that spot, but just what are our thoughts around that, and what can we do, even because corruption is two-way. That's the truth. There is corruption. We are the reason why corruption continues to grow, because we agree to it and we continue. If it's licensing, making it so hard for us to get our licenses and all that, we're the people who bribe. So it's a two-way journey, but at the same time, what can we do to make the cost of doing businesses in this country easier?
Does you want to respond to that first?
Thank you. My name is Rachel Ndungu from Biashara Africa. We are an e-commerce and lending platform for small businesses. So if Noreen, you want to talk to small businesses, I'm here. Yeah. We don't work with kiosks. But we can help when it comes to small businesses. Charles, allow me to request for help. We've impacted over 10,000 small businesses, but we always struggle to connect them with like freelancers. Do they belong to the gig economy? Right? And I don't know how to do it. So I'll be very happy if that would interest yourself or GIZ. I think that would be very helpful. Some of the support they need, we can't offer, but we think if we had a partner or collaborated with an organization that can aggregate freelancers or gig economy providing various services, then we could match them with the small businesses, and that would be very helpful. So that's great. Yeah, but also allow me to appreciate the government.
I think Annabelle, that he's spot on, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a program, and maybe Noreen didn't mention, where you're giving grants to the youth. And I think that had a very huge impact. I wish we could also have a similar for women entrepreneurs. Yeah, or even still run a similar program. But I think the impact of those, of the funding was immense, although some of us bought cars. But anyway, we are Kenyans.
So let's take the last one, and then we'll have responses, and then we'll pass the mic again. Okay, that will be second last one. There's a last one there on the corner, but second last. Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Amos Gashiri, part of Fundis App, part of Job Tech Alliance with Ziada. So there's this problem which I think thoughts would just a viewpoint and a conversation about would really help. It's on the financing side, as she spoke on, where I think a lot of lifeline for most of us is on foreign capital. So there's still a huge challenge on local capital, both high net worth, institutional investors, and angel investors. So I don't know how this can be solved on the government side, policy side, the startup association side, because from our end we've seen at least some level of assistance from the government on the grant side. So it's a slight de-risking, more on almost free capital that should help de-risk on the equity side. But still on the debt side, most of the startups are still not able to get to a point they're achieving debt. So there's still that equity piece that should be mostly coming from the local environment, which would also help when we are getting foreign capital, because the valuations are still skewed owing us to the fact that there is a lack of local capital. And still a lot of startups are not getting to a point to even meet the standards of receiving foreign capital. So I don't know what will happen in between there, because we still have a lot of capital that is being taken to stock exchanges, land, and purchase of such items, yet still there's a lot of returns to be made on the startup side. So I don't know how we can get that conversation in and also show that there is relative risk to return for the same.
Just to add on to what Alex has said, there's a lot of investor readiness on the startup side, but I think there needs to be a lot on the investor side, mostly on the angel investor side, and educating them on what investing in a startup entails. Because there's questions that we get and some impatience that comes with investors who are used to maybe investing in land, for example, and just want to translate it apples to the startup side, and it's not going to work like that. So I challenge the people in this room to also provide investor readiness for the investors, and mostly the new investors in the scene. Yeah.
I think that's it's a good segue. As actually, sure. Annabelle, that's a very good comment, and part of what we've been trying to do, especially on the equity side, both for private equity and angel investors, is have conversations with them even on the differences in the different markets. Like East Africa is very different from South Africa, West Africa. They have different value chains. If you look at the gig economy versus informal settlements type of work versus informal jobs, versus even people who have side gigs and they're employed. You know, that's very different spaces. So we've been having conversations with them, and they're interested in learning, and I guess we shall be inviting some of you to our roundtables, because then they get to hear from the entrepreneurs and they get to hear what's happening on the space. But there's a conversation already happening. There's a convening that we are getting more involved in and more intentional. And then I think the bit of de-risking, which is a good ask. You did talk about securities exchanges and stock exchange. I think I'll just mention quickly that we are working with the Capital Markets Authority to better have good listing and securities regulation for the country. If you notice, since May 1st, they have done a public participation. So I encourage you to go to the drafts that we've worked with them that somehow help the growth sector. And I know I'm focusing more on the SME, not the micro. But there's a place where we can even now start having conversations about the micro. So there's a security listing, a public participation exercise that's happening from government. So kindly go in, look at those regulations, see where they give value, where you need to add your voice. You can do it as an association, you can do it through us, you can do it through the legal firms. So there's a place that we can play to inform the policies that are happening. But that notwithstanding, there is a place for high net worth individuals. There's also a place for high net worth companies that are interested in grooming and doing more so like a corporate social responsibility to others. And we are working with business advisors that are licensed by the Capital Markets Authority, who then do this through commercial papers or do it through bonds or through private placements. So if that's a place that somebody would be interested in learning more on how to access funding that is slightly patient, but also with a bit of structure that helps you grow. And there's also a regulator involved in the process. That's also something that our business advisors would be able to give. In terms of e-learning platform and grants for women, I think I want to be a disruptor here. And I'll say it kindly. Most of the donors focus on grants, and there's a place for grants. But I think there's also time to grow and groom the business to be able to attract debt and equity on its own. So if you're interested in the growth stage, where you're looking at beyond the grants that helped me attract the growth to the level I'm at, what else do I need to do? What do I need to change in my business model? What do I need to change in how I do my workspace and how I interact with other people in the value chain or in the sector? Then there's a place for that space. And I like that we were talking with Pat earlier. We were saying, how do we fix that space? How do we help entrepreneurs, both women and men who are in that space, where they're saying, I have grown. Yes, I may need grants as a blended capital option to help me attract debt or equity investors. But how else do I grow? Because there comes a time that we also need to celebrate $1 million and more in turnover and also appreciate the journey. So I'm not saying don't go for grants, but I hope you're hearing me. I'm saying there's also vision to plan out and say, if I was to attract debt, if I was to stand on my own, and Annabelle, you're smiling because I know that's the next stage for you. What do I need to get happening now? And what stages do I need to do? And that's why I went back to advocating. You need a transactions advisor. You need a business advisor. These are people who have already done it for others, so they're able to walk with you the journey. And some of them are very kind. They use different models. Some of them you pay them by milestones. Others, you pay them by the deal getting closed. So you can negotiate your way. You don't have to pay upfront. And where you need help and ability to understand how that works, then approach projects like ourselves to be able to give you what's happening in the market. So all is not lost, but I'm just disrupting the space. Let's walk away from grants and start looking to debt and equity.
We'll do another round, but I'd like for Noreen to respond to these. So the questions were raised around the business environment and the cost of doing business. That is still not what it looks like in paper, even though every year Kenya seems to be improving in the ranking in terms of the business environment, saying that Kenya is doing better. But the gentleman from Fundi Up asked, everyone seems to be focusing on external funds and external financing and everything. Where is there opportunity for mobilization of local resources? I know that the Kenya government for sure has and is running a program with the World Bank that seeks to fund small businesses. It was called a KYIP something, KYOP, yes. So do you want to just speak to the environment and also these locally available opportunities for Kenya government to then support local businesses?
Thank you, Charles. First, allow me to speak on the question on corruption that was raised. Thank you, Mercy. I think as a country, and let's just be honest, and I think you even headed that direction in your comments when you said it's a two-way. It really is two-way. And it starts on very many formats. You don't have to give that bribe. You don't have to support that habit, because it's a habit you're supporting and you're growing it, and we've grown it and it's become this monster. We're the only ones to blame. We're the ones who grow it. You bribe your KPLC, you bribe that policeman on the road. Some even bribe their children's teachers, buying them perfume and giving them something at the end of the term. You don't have to do that. So it's a culture thing, and I think the word mind shift just works for me this year. We need to move away from that. And it starts from you just doing that one deed of refusing to be in that position of bribing. And I think the effects then will be felt on. And if the government or you feel like the environment is not enabling you to come in as an investor, then at that point, don't give that bribe. Move to that country that needs you. At the end of the day, it's about global citizens. If Uganda is going to provide you that environment, go there, but don't give that bribe to that official. Because the minute you give that bribe to that official, the next company that wants to come and set up in Kenya goes through the same process and the same process. But when that government official is not receiving those things, trust me, or one whistleblower comes up and says, I tried to come and do this, and says it in a proper settings. I've been in settings, investment meetings where, you know, the whistle has been blown. And the officers have been, you know, they've been investigated. And some have been moved from the offices that they held. But, you know, the culture, we bribe, you keep quiet. You bribe, you keep quiet, just to make your life simpler. I think we need to move away from that as culture. And then as government, I feel, and this is a discussion we are having, we've come to the right age. We're now talking about how do we support entrepreneurs on their journeys. And you'll see this, you'll see this. How do you start with that startup or that the missing middle, and grow them? Because when you start a business in Kenya, most people tend to say, you know, it's a walking nightmare. But really, the essence of it is that the information is also not accessible. How do we ensure people have the information that they need? Even we've tried to propose, and say, I thank God you're in the room. Why don't you on your website even just have a step-by-step guide? You know, all those national and the county reforms that have been done, have it on their website. So when someone is coming to set up a business at national level or county level, you know this is what you need, instead of groping in the dark. And then ask now the rest of the agencies, how do we now make that journey for the SME intentional? If it's incentives, you know, because incentives is the key here. I like someone who said, the only way your business can be successful, it's the money. Actually, it's not the money. It's seeing the end goal, how you get your business. For every entrepreneur, how you get from A to Z. But it's very difficult to see. But once the incentives are put in place, for example, KRA, we've talked to them, give them the tax holidays, or see what it is that you can do. And they've been open. They've been saying, where are these SMEs? You know, agencies always say, where are these SMEs? Give them the holiday. And KEBS, you know, do the certification in a proper manner. And they have SME programs that actually, for as an SME owner, for 3 products that you have, I think the other 2 are free. KRD, if you need somewhere where you can go and have your product enhanced or be able to manufacture your product, for example, if you can't do it within a space, KRD has those services, and they're actually supporting businesses. So how do we now walk that journey? And as we walk that journey, how then do we guide our private players to strengthen the pillars of financing, capacity building, market access? Yeah? So I think for us, as government, and that's what we're doing right now, we're having discussions. In fact, we're discussing with the EAC, how do we come up with an East Africa community policy on SMEs? And the groundwork has been done thanks to EABC. So we feel that this policy, once it comes into place, because we're already trading, you know, with each other, then it would be able maybe to grow some businesses, especially the high growth. Any business that you show them market, they'll do everything. They'll find the funding, they'll do all those training, they'll keep the proper books. But once you've shown them where those goods are going, because you can give them the funding, they buy cars, as she has admitted, they buy a car or they buy a land, yeah? But if they don't see the end goal, which is these business products that I'm producing, where are they going? Then I think the journey now becomes muddy and muckled up. So for the government, that is what we are pushing for currently. How do we support these high growth businesses to be able to see a business move from point A to point Z? And the government agencies jump in and be intentional in how it is that they support those businesses. That is what we're looking at.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, probably just a few more. So I see Bonnie, and then yeah. So let's start with you, and then we take 2 more, and then we see how we can wrap it up.
Thank you, Charles. My question is more of when it comes to the gig economy and how it relates to formal sector, because we all agree the gig economy is largely in the informal sector, which is more so unregulated. It does sit outside most of the labor laws that we have that are existing as of today. But as we grow the economy, as most of our governments are growing the economy, we are attracting more formal corporates that are actually creating more white-collar jobs. How does this sound to the future of gig economy? For example, does it mean that in future, when we have most of the corporates that are creating more formal jobs, that are creating more white-collar jobs, does it mean that most of the young people will now be attracted to the corporate world, the corporate world, and the gig economy will be actually unattractive to most of the young people? Are we actually not creating a conundrum, you know, like a race towards the bottom? It's a question actually the rest of the room can think about as the panelists answer that question. Thank you. My second question, and I think this goes to the presenters of today, that is the We Takataka Solutions and the Build Her. Now, you find that in the gig economy, most of the skills that we are talking about that actually makes the young people fit in the gig economy, these skills are somehow, again, informal, or rather, nobody talks about these kind of skills in the university or rather in our education institutions. What kind of skills have you noticed that actually the government and in coordination with the educational institutions, they can now incorporate these skills in the education system so that we can have graduates who are actually ready, market ready for the gig economy? I don't know these kind of skills that maybe you can mention them for the government to think about how they can now partner with the education institutions to make sure that most of the young people are equipped with these skills and they are ready for the gig economy market. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Allow me to say this. I think apart from the president's job, the most difficult job is being an entrepreneur. Yeah. Sometimes I wish we could have an exchange program between the entrepreneurs and the government, so that you sit on this side, you know, as entrepreneurs, and then we sit on the other side as government. Yeah, because maybe that would make a, yes. Because one example is like the scrap dealers. Yeah, they woke up, there was a scrap dealer metal trading ban, you know. Now, in such kind of decisions, does the government also talk to the players? Do you say, okay, because from what I heard is that the reason why the trade was banned, there were some people stealing KPLC cables and SGR, you know. Now, wouldn't the government sit with these guys and ask them, okay, so for us to be in good books together, what do we need to do? You know, is the ban the best way to do it, or is there another better solution? But government wakes up, we have a metal scrap dealer ban. Okay. Now, when we export electronic waste, because sometimes we export waste to other countries for treatment, when our container gets to the port, it can take up to 1 month. When agencies are not able to talk to one another, you know, there's KRA, there's Treasury, there's so many of them. You're sent to different authorities. Again, when we apply for licenses, and I think even Takataka have the same problem. We have trucks that move in all these counties. You have to pay different licenses. If the truck is moving to Machakos, to Kisii, you have different rates that you're paying. And now we are talking about EAC. If movement between our countries is even such a challenge, how will it be if we are now moving to Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania? So I think we need to be very practical in terms of how government deals with the private sector and especially the entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sylvia from Mongoza. I think, Boni, you've just led into my question. My question was really, it's really not a question, but maybe a conversation we should be thinking about. I was looking at the 3 companies that presented today, Takataka Builder and WeCenter, and I was just thinking, they are operating in a very, the agencies they deal with, I think you deal with NCA, National Construction Authority, you deal with NEMA, and I think it would be very interesting to see how they've been able to jump the hurdles. Because yes, it's great to see the impact numbers and everything, but why you're not seeing many innovative startups getting into those spaces is because of the agencies and the, because NEMA is a nightmare, NCA is another nightmare in itself, but they've actually managed to do something and their impact numbers are great. So, and I know for the donor community, impact numbers is everything. It's why, it's how you justify the funding and everything. But I think on the side of, you know, organizations like ESOs and even the government, people like Noreen, we would like to know, like, how have you managed? And I think maybe moving forward as we're having this kind of presentations, it would be nice to see these companies telling us how did they do it, because they're still in business. So there must be a way they're doing it. And as Pat said, government is here to stay. We have to do business with them. So I think we can also use them as brand ambassadors for other startups, just to get the numbers increasing, because you said when we are a big number, then we have a voice.
Absolutely.
On the issue of working with them. One of the things that we've constantly done is to just keep the government to be our friends. We always have government stakeholder workshops. Like now we have one at the Golden Tulip, where we have NEMA, we have NITA, we have most of the agencies. So that we constantly sensitize them, you know, create awareness. I think that has been one of the ways that we've managed. So that when you go to NEMA, they know this is WeCenter. They sensitize us. But the problem is that there's always a new agency that comes up, a new authority. That is the biggest problem, you know. So we think we've talked to all of them, but something, there's always a new agency. But I was just helping you. Maybe you can still answer her.
As Noreen prepares, you want to
say something? Yeah. I think for us as Takataka Solutions, one of the most challenging, let me say, first is land, especially for sorting, because everyone says not in my backyard. Like I can tell you, if you visited the site in Kiambu, I think we had a lot of back and forth with the community, with the politicians, with NEMA. Today you're dealing with this, tomorrow is not there. So that is one thing. So sensitization has been one of the things we've always done, or especially now when it comes to hiring. We make sure that we've considered the locals in that. The other challenge is about the licensing, as my friend said from WeCenter. Licensing has been crazy. Maybe if you go back, you can mention it somewhere in the corridors and know that Takataka Solutions and waste management, we are suffering with licenses. Because like now for Nairobi County, Takataka Solutions, we have 15 trucks. We pay licenses per truck, and it's 20,000 shillings. Apart from that, it's not that you're being given license like this, take and go home. It has to go for inspection to make sure that it's the right truck to do garbage collection. It's crazy. Then later we go to NEMA, we pay per truck, the same truck. So you find each truck has 2 licenses. Then from there you come to the site, you pay another license for sorting, for recycling, for composting, and subsequent audits. It's crazy. That's why most of the people have not been able to run this particular business, however much we try to sensitize them. One, getting a sorting site and a land is an issue. Sensitizing, getting a license is another issue. Then the crazier part is now dealing with cartels. I've been the partnerships person for a long time there, and I can tell you it's been crazy. I thank God I've survived until now.
This is a direct feedback. It's a direct feedback to government. And Noreen, feel free to share with MSEA. Yeah, so I'm just asking Noreen to feel free to share while she works with the SME in the Office of the President, but there's also an agency established by law to be there for SMEs, and these are SMEs speaking, saying how the environment, the regulatory compliance environment in Kenya is not what people think it is. Now, if the government is going to stifle companies through those agencies, those companies are not going to create the jobs that the government is looking to create, isn't it? So how is it that the government is not seeing that? You know, that to create the jobs for Kenyan youth, government agencies must find ways to allow for companies to do business, isn't it? But companies won't do business. Now, I'll give you one example. What Nora just said is simple, but what she didn't tell you is that Taka Solutions had to hire a government relations person to navigate the terrain. They had to hire somebody who understands government, who knows government. And it was a nightmare to even try to get the environmental impact assessment approved by NEMA and give the licenses. It was a complete nightmare. Daniel, the CEO, kept calling me all the time, day and night, saying, we're gonna drop this thing because government won't let us work. You know? And Ronnie and I would then look for people we know in government and say, look, hell, it's just one company. How hard can it be? You know? And just when you think you hack it, somebody else came up and said, look, I wasn't consulted. It didn't pass through my desk. You know, can you write afresh? And then they have to write afresh. So it's not, but Noreen, really?
Today is my lucky day. I think but first let me allow my colleague from SEA, because I've been seeing him putting his hand up, to just make his comment.
So thank you so much for having me. Now, Noreen, you've been having a hard day, but I think there's a lot that we're doing as a government. And as she pointed out, there's a lot of support that we're getting from the Executive Office of the President in terms of supporting our systems to ensure that we are really voice of the MSCs. So sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Moses Kalungi. I work for Micro and Small Enterprises Authority. So Micro and Small Enterprises Authority is a government agency under State Department of Trade and Enterprise Development. And basically what to do is support to micro and small enterprises. So for the micro enterprise, it's an enterprise with turnover of less than 500,000 in a year. You know, that's at the bottom of the entrepreneurship. And then the small enterprise is an enterprise with a turnover of from 500 to 5 million Kenyan shillings. So those are basically the entrepreneurs that we deal with. Now, in terms of coordination and harmonization of the sector, the government saw that it's very important for us to have a sector which is coordinated, and that's why through their support we have the Office of Registrar of MSCs, and these bring back the discussion that we've been having, formalization. How do we ensure that we know where MSCs are in this country? You know, if we want to establish the number of traders or the number of manufacturers that we have in the country, how do we go about it? So we have an Office of Registrar of MSCs, which basically deals with the registration of these entrepreneurs. Now we organize them in such a way that, yes, they are big numbers, so we take them as associations, which are, one association composed of 35 entrepreneurs, and then we have some umbrella bodies for those associations. So we believe through these arrangement, we as MSEA, we can be the voice of MSCs across the country. It's very important for them to formalize. Please pass this information to them. And we believe through formalization, there'll be a lot of support that will be coming to them. Secondly, another issue that I've captured in this discussion is aspect of digitization. We are also having a program with UNDP, whereby we are sensitizing MSCs to digitize, to be digital. Because you see, the world dynamics are changing. If you're not in a position of, embracing digital technology, then it really becomes hard for you even as MSC to survive. So we are running this program, and we believe at the end of the day it will, yield good fruit, which will support them. So there's a lot of things that we are doing. I've had an aspect of coordination. Yes, we are developing a coordination strategy together with Kipra. It's in the final stages, and we believe these small itches that you're seeing here and there, probably after that coordination strategy is launched, shall be in a position of, having them done. Also, another important program that we are running together with the ministry is the Biashara Center. Now, with the Biashara Center, what we are doing, we are bringing all government players who are involved in issues to do with MSMEs. My colleague talked about KIRDI, she talked about KEPS. Also, we have KIE, we have KRA. So we bring all these government agencies together, at least to ensure that if there is any support that you want, you can get it within, within one center, like the case of Uduma Center. So there's a lot that we are doing. It's only that maybe it's not communicated clearly, and that's why Noreen said clearly that we need to come up with a clear communication strategy on support that we are giving to MSC, so that everyone understands what the position of the government in terms of supporting MSMEs is. Our pleasure is to have, or our goal is to have, this micro grow to small, and then eventually to, to medium, and even to large enterprises at the end of the day. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That homework, I think you better take it back for the access to information, because everything I've heard here, even the questions that have been raised, like you've just mentioned KIE, and I remembered KIE has funding for SMEs. And I think for women it's at what, 7%? And women groups, I think they're about between 7 and 10%. And they have the money. We've sent SMEs to them, like those ones in manufacturing, and they've received funding. And KIE, I think every time we go for the budgets, for doing the government budgets, I see KIE being asked, this money you always take, why do you return it? So Treasury is like, maybe we need to cap it. And KIE also says the same thing. People go to them, they don't have collateral, which is fine, but books, that's the same thing they go there and say. But, they have the funding for SMEs. So I think you need to go and maybe as government, we need to list down, and maybe MSEA would be the better authority to say what is being done. With regards to the county levies, this was raised and done at the county level reforms. And it was a partnership between the UK High Commission and Ease of Doing Business, which is an agency within government. And I can send to you the link, or you can check and see that there are actually counties who signed up and said they'll cut down on the levies. And then there are some counties, of course, who are slow, but they said they'll look into them because they have to go to the county assemblies, because it's all a matter of law. So yes, there is a lot of discussions happening on that, because we know it affects the final price of something. So as government, we're taking the lead on that, and we have a lot of support. We've gotten that from the UK High Commission. So that's in place. We have the national and the county level reforms. So I'll share with you the links as a business person so that you can know what is happening on that space. With regards to the bans, and today by there I've agreed to be your punching bag, your your aim and your what, because I took up civil servanthood and I really love it. With regards to the bans, even a child, you cannot say stop playing with the fire, stop playing, and they continue playing with the fire. They'll get what? They'll get banned. The scrap metal association or sector that you have just mentioned, they have government regulators who go and check, and they actually find the KPLC former metal posts. You'll find this SGR. Where infrastructure is being built for the scrap metal to get something, which is not right, because you're robbing the citizens. So they've been told stop this. Some have been arrested. And now what finally happened? We had an almost Nairobi-wide blackouts because someone decided to steal the KPLC stuff. It's not really fair. So that's why the ban took place. So let's be always honest and realistic, and stop saying government, government, government. Even government, we are the prefects. So when we need to put our foot down, we put it down. So for the scrap dealers, we had to put a ban. And during that ban, what happens is negotiations continue. Not that they start during the ban. They've already started before you're being called and being told, why are you doing this? Why, you're even being begged like a small child, why are you doing this? So by the time the ban came into effect, that had happened. The same with the mitumba. During COVID, we had the ban. Why? We have this new disease. We know nothing about it. We've been telling the mitumba people, stop importing innerwear and contrabands. We call them contrabands. This disease, we don't even understand it, as health and government. And you still want to bring in, because we asked them how many contrabands are in the high seas, and we have our intel. It was a lot coming in. That's why we put in the ban. And when we had discussions with them, and finally they agreed to not bring in the contrabands, then we were able to lift up the ban. So the ban was not because government was trying to frustrate the mitumba traders. No. If any, government does want to see businesses continue to thrive. But if we had to stop that because, we don't want it being a problem to the citizens who we are protecting, we had to do it. And it has worked. I think now if you're buying your contrabands, you're buying them at a more expensive price, the innerwears, because they're illegal. They're illegal. So even the people in this room, please don't be caught at toy market buying those things, or at Kikomba negotiating for used bras. Those things are not supposed to, be coming in. Let's support our local manufacturers. We have companies locally manufacturing this same, stuff. Why don't we support and grow those industries? Because those are also industries, yeah? So trust me, a ban, by the time a ban comes into place, the government is not trying to frustrate anyone. We are now trying to put in there to enforce the laws that are supposed to be within that sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to 1:30. Time has really moved. I think it's because the room is enclosed. We're not sitting outside. We might open the curtains and it's 6 in the evening. Yeah. But it's been very, very useful conversations that we've had. Some of it that were taken away. So for example, the last conversation on the navigation of policy regulatory environment, that's the way we will then convene just roundtable on that, to just, to have some of our firms share how they have been able to navigate so that others can learn from that and the challenges, but also to share their frustrations with government and say, look, on the paper it looks easy, but it ain't easy, and it's costing us a lot of money, and there's, from what I could hear, there's a lot of duplications, numerous agencies charging you for the same thing, and it is true. A typical SME, if you go to the offices or where the premises are, they almost have a dedicated wall for government licensing. It runs all the way down. Not forgetting the hidden ones, like the fire extinguisher, the health inspection, the what have you, everything else. Each of them costing money, and that's why some of them then opt not to formalize, because formalization means, by the time you start paying this, you haven't started. Those are not considered taxes. So those are not taxes. Those are your ordinary permits. Once you have them, you do your business, you start paying taxes. So it slows down the journey to formalization, even as MCI is trying to move SMEs to go there. But there's also a question that Movie asked, whether are we seeing a promotion towards the growth of the formal and an impediment towards the growth of informal, which got me thinking. Perhaps it's something we can ponder on, and we could have it as a follow-up later on, in terms of, do we have a proper understanding of gig? Does gig just mean informal? All right. So Santos is here. Santos is a university graduate. Santos is a developer. Okay. If Santos does developing for different kinds of people, different kinds of companies, is that gig? And if it is gig, is university skills and qualification considered not appropriate for that particular sector? I think we need a broader conversation on what gig is and the kind of skilling that we're seeing, and therefore the enabling, so that we don't stereotype gig and then box it and say gig only means a fundi without a degree in the informal sector, because then we will have boxed gig. So everybody else who has formal skills, who can do something here and there and are not looking for an 8-to-5 employment, but they want to use their skills to bring in creativity and innovation and disruption, that is not just channeled into one space. For example, Annabelle has skills that they want to create a platform, and do certain things and link different kinds of services. That's gig. Would we therefore say, look, Annabelle, you have a degree, you don't belong in that sector. No. Go look for a job. I recall there was once a relative of mine who went for recruitment. I think it was KDA for police, and they had a university certificate. And they pulled him out of the line, out of the queue. They say, sorry, you are overqualified. Go look for something else. This is not your kind of job. And he left there crying. He said, well, I have just been discriminated against by my own government. But I never got a job. That's why you're overqualified. So perhaps we could have a next conversation, even as we move towards mobilization and conversation on a policy around gig. Do we have a unified understanding of what gig is, and therefore gig economy, and therefore who then plays or gets to play in the gig economy, isn't it? Thank you very much for this, for coming, for sharing, for learning together. Please put a hand together for this amazing panelists here, and just coming and sharing and all that. And I want to appreciate our partner firms, Taka, We Center, and Build Her, for offering yourselves, to share and to open up your companies and your innovations so that people can see, all right? But also agreeing to share in partnership. I mean, there's going to be a lot of follow-up from here. People wanting to know more and people wanting to see how they can partner. I am sure that Grace is almost like yeah, this is my pipeline, she's counted you already, you're 3. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot that's going on. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who came. I think I'll hand it over to Imani to tell us where lunch is. Yeah, Sylvia.
I just want to say thank you again, and can we just give another round of applause to our panel and to our grantees? I think I'm also personally very excited to see, I feel like this was a very honest conversation, and I know I feel like Nairobi tries to be a very collaborative city with a lot of people talking about how we can do things better, and this is critical, but as I think Pat was saying earlier, it's also about being extremely honest where the problems are so we can fix them. And I look forward to another conversation, particularly around, as Charles has mentioned, how do we go from here into defining kind of a new space of work? What does it mean not just to create the jobs, but to make them decent jobs? As our partner from GIZ has mentioned, I think this is a really important part of the conversation that we didn't have today, but is really critical to how are we creating the right kinds of jobs in an environment that's enabling scale for that. So I want to thank you again so much for being here, and I know we've gone late, but I think it got very exciting in the last hour, so I hope you all enjoyed it. Please don't forget to go away from here with at least one takeaway, one business card, one concrete connection that you can make, so that we make this practical and not just a nice room of collaboration, but we really go from here with some partnerships that will help us all scale and create impact. So thanks again for being here.
All right, thank you so much. We are going to do our 6-minute trek, hike, walk back to the hotel. Yeah, that's where our lunch is served. So everybody has been issued one of this. It's a buffet. All right. Sorry, could I just wrap up? Thank you. I understand the excitement around lunch. I really do. So yeah, we'll all head out to the main restaurant at Tamarind Tree Hotel. It's a buffet starter lunch. Everybody needs one of this to get it. So if you're missing one, please let me know. But yes, thank you so much for coming. Let's continue with the conversations over lunch. If you're happy to stay over, some of our team members are available in the afternoon. Let's continue the conversations. Let's figure out how to actually carry them off of this room. Thank you. And everybody who joined in live, thank you so much. We'll be sharing a report soon on the same. Take care.